Good evening, everyone, and I am the Mayor, Chris Rayburn, and would like to welcome you all to the Council meeting on the 16th of March 2021. This meeting is held in accordance with the Strathbogie Shire governance rules and the Ministerial Good Practice Guidelines PG1 for virtual meetings. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of our land on which we are meeting, and I pay my respects to their elders, past and emerging. Any apologies or leave of absence tonight, Madam CEO? Disclosures of conflicts. Any councillors have any disclosures? Councillor Hayes-Burke.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I've got a disclosure on item 9.7, planning application P 2017-121, and 9.8, planning application P 2020-125. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Councillor Horrigan.
Through you, Mayor, I also have a general conflict of interest on 9.2 P 2020-140-239 Cows Lane because I'm friends with the party.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. I did fail in my introduction to go through the rules of how the meeting was going to be performed tonight. I got a bit excited, so I'll read those out at this moment. Until further notice, all meetings conducted by the Strathbogie Shire will be held virtual and live streamed on our website at www.strathbogie.vic.gov.au. This ensures we are meeting the Victorian Government's social distancing requirements to slow the spread of coronavirus, COVID-19, and help keep our community safe. We encourage all our community members to watch the meeting online, given we have had to close the public gallery until further notice following legal advice around how to comply with the COVID-19 social distancing rules. Today, councillors and executive are abiding by the social distancing rules currently in force. Due to the relaxed COVID-19 restrictions, a number of submitters we have for planning items to be considered in this meeting. We have permitted our one submitter to enter the conference room at a time to make their verbal submission. This will be tightly managed by staff to ensure all current restrictions are complied with at all times. I want to take the opportunity to outline that voting at today's meeting will be held by a show of hands. All councillors will raise their hands to vote on it for any motion. If a councillor has a conflict of interest in the matter, they will be asked to leave the meeting and no discussion on the matter will be commenced until that we are sure they have done so. Councillors will rejoin the meeting after the matter has been considered and the vote concluded. If we have technical difficulties during today's meeting, which means we are unable to broadcast to the public, we will adjourn the meeting for 15 minutes. If this issue is not resolved after this time, we will but we maintain a quorum of councillors under local law, we will continue the meeting. If we cannot maintain a quorum, I'll have to close the meeting and we'll call another council meeting to consider the unfinished business on the agenda. Thank you for joining us this evening. So now we're up to confirmation of minutes of previous meeting of the 12th of February 2021. Would someone like to move, please? Move Councillor Lykos, seconded Councillor Murray. Any comments? Okay, all those in favour? Against? They're carried. Petitions. CEO, do we have any petitions? Yeah. There are no petitions this evening. Reports from Mayor and Councillor and delegates. If I may be so bold, I'll go first myself. I want to start tonight by thanking all those who are sharing their thoughts and ideas at our Share Strathbogie sessions. We have now been to Strathbogie, Nagambie and Avenel, which Councillor Murray will also report on, and we'll be at Euroa Farmers Market this Saturday, and then next week we'll be at Longwood and Violet Town. The feedback we have received has been fantastic. It's so important we hear from the community to inform the council vision, council plan, financial plan and our budget. The Strathbogie session identified its top infrastructure priorities as buildings and facilities, roads, drains, bridges and footpaths, and waste management. While the Strathbogie session identified its top services priorities as climate change, road, drains, bridges and footpaths, and the environment. At Ngambie session, the top infrastructure priorities were building and facilities, roads, drains, bridges and footpaths, and major facilities that promote tourism. While Ngambie's top service priorities as roads, drains, bridges, footpaths, supporting local business and planning and development. At Avenel, you want to speak on that or? No. At Avenel, the top infrastructure priorities were waste management, building and facilities, and aquatic facilities. While Avenel's top service priorities were climate change, environment, and parks and gardens. Council will also be offering the opportunity for community to have their say online, and we'll be calling for people to put their hands up to be part of our first ever community forum. ARTC update. Last week, I wrote another letter to the Australian Rail Track Corporation, ARTC, CEO Mark Campbell, advocating for better community engagement to decide the future of the existing Anderson Street overpass and the Arawa Railway precinct. We are urged that ARC take a step back in the process and implement an engagement process that will allow our community to reach a group decision on the future design of the Arawa Railway precinct. Our community is calling for ARTC to explore more design options. We are urging them to listen. Further comment will be made tonight when we've got a motion before the council. Procurement policy. Finally, I want to discuss some concern in our community about council not awarding work to local businesses. At last month's council meeting, we endorsed several revisions of our procurement policy to strengthen the local content provisions. Council voted unanimously to endorse the changes to the policy, which are designed to award more works to locals. Council has increased the evaluation rating to mandate that local content and regional benefit will also signify the tenders and or quotes will be awarded to local suppliers that are within 5% of the highest scoring price offer. I want to take this opportunity to say Council is working hard on supporting locals. We have also committed to improving our communications, and we are now advertising tenders on our social media channels, along with including information on our new community update column in the Arawa Gazette, the Ngambie Community Voice, and our website. Thank you. That is my report. Any other councillor want to make their report, please? Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make a short, brief report about what's been happening in the Hughes Creek ward as their councillor. Thanks for Mayor mentioning the Share Strathbogie session in Avenel, which I attended on Saturday along with some officers and the Mayor as well was there, which was terrific. It was a wet day, but the community turned out to support the Twilight Market that was on in surprising numbers, I thought, despite the weather. And the Shire received some great feedback, and I think the Mayor has gone through most of that. And we were pleased. Well, I was personally pleased to see so much response about the importance of environment in our lovely Shire. I also are continuing my sessions at the Daily Dose down in Avenel for my Friday chat between 1 and 3, and I'm pleased to see a number of people who've been availing themselves of that opportunity and coming and having a chat with me down there. And I would encourage anyone to come and see me if they have an issue which they want to talk through. So thank you for those coming down. Avenel Active had their last meeting, which I attended on March the 10th. It was a terrific meeting full of dedicated and passionate volunteers. There was about 36 of them involved in Avenel Active, their local action group, and a great many topics discussed, including their renewable energy hub, which they're looking at, the community bus, which they've got up and running, and some town beautification works, which was great to see. So thank you to all the volunteers who are working so hard down at in that ward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. And Councillor Reg Dickinson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. On behalf of Councillor Lykos and myself, I make the following report. Last Saturday, I attended the National Women's Day breakfast. Great event, great speaker, Eleanor Cronin from Kestrel Aviation in Mangalore. Very entertaining and very informative. Then in the afternoon, with yourself, Councillor Rayburn, we attended the rowing event and presented trophies to a couple of the winning crews. It was the Scotch Mercantile rowing event. The previous Saturday was the Now Festival, which was a bit smaller than normal, probably due to the COVID restrictions, but it was held in conjunction with the market, and the Chair Strathbogie marquee was there, where councillors and staff met with members of the public for a sharing of ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Councillor Lykos.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to talk about the skate park, which I had an interview with Win News yesterday morning and ABC also, and just wanted to announce and confirm to the Nagambie community that it will be starting Thursday week, and it is due for completion mid-June. So very exciting, and can't wait to see it happening.
Thank you, Councillor Lykos. Any other councillor? Councillor Binks.
Thanks, Mayor Rayburn. With the first Share Strathbogie session we had on Tuesday, the 24th, I believe it was, February, was up at the Strathbogie Memorial Hall. It was a really great event to kick off our Share Strathbogie sessions, and I was really heartened to see many community coming out to share their ideas and dreams for our Shire. I was really inspired by the top priorities, and for infrastructure that was buildings and facilities, roads, drains, bridges and footpaths, and waste management. I'm on the Goulburn Valley Council Waste Management Forum, so I hope I can add some learning and insight to that area. The top services priorities were climate change, road, drains, bridges and footpaths, and the environment. On Monday, the 8th of March, I had the honour of hosting the International Women's Day event at the Swanpool Cinema in Swanpool. Brazen Hussies documentary, which was a story of the rise of the women's liberation movement in Australia, was screened to a full house of over 150 people, which was the first full house that the cinema had had post-COVID, with obviously their numbers restriction, that is. It's not full. So it was really exciting to have a sellout event, and then that was followed by a panel discussion with the producer of the film, Andrea Foxworthy, Leanne Miller, Assembly member for the North East of the First People's Assembly, and member for Indi, Dr. Helen Haynes, and that was hosted by Lana Johnson. I had organised this event with Alana and Mullies and the team of incredible volunteers from the Swanpool Cinema probably over 3 months ago now, and I don't think we could have imagined the significance of the screening of this documentary in the current federal environment around women's rights. So it was a really momentous event, and a significant discussion followed the screening, and it was a real honour to be able to represent the Strathbogie Shire there at that event and be a part of that. Last night, I attended the Strathbogie Tableland Action Group AGM, and we discussed lots of things. And I'm really looking forward to having a fruitful year with that group of people and having some items in the completion box. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Councillor Hayes-Burke.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to provide the community with an update on ARTC matters. So I attended the last working group, and it appears to be the very last working group of how it was set up. And I attended one of the community consultation sessions, which involved broader community discussion. And it was clear at those sessions that the community are very keen to see another alternative to the bridge. I'd just like to share with the community, we've seemed to have a recent breakthrough with ARTC. We've received a letter from the CEO, and I'll just read you a small snippet of the letter. It says, ARTC acknowledges that the community has ongoing concerns about the safety, connectivity and functionality of any proposed solution. And to this end, ARTC will not progress any further development of a bridge solution and are committed to undertake further engagement with the community on a range of different solutions, including an underpass. And I mean, we'll put this on our news section of the website, but I just thought it'd be worthwhile, considering we got that information late in the day, that I just wanted to share it with everyone. And I look forward to seeing as many people as possible at the farmers market this Saturday for our Euroa. Christy and I will be there for the Share Strathbogie session for Seven Creeks Ward. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Councillor Horrigan.
Through you, Mayor, just seconding Sally Hayes-Burke. So please make your way down to the farmers market this Saturday. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Appreciate that. Public question time. CEO.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. There are two questions for tonight. And the first question is from Darren Lyons from Cohen's Bridge, who asks, it is disappointing that a consultation meeting for the proposed caravan park at Cohen's Bridge has been scheduled for 17th of March, with many questions and also information still outstanding that objectors do not yet have access to. The 1,108 objectors, plus another 310 that signed a petition, were also given only 7 or 8 business days notice, and the meeting is also during working hours for most people. I understand there are planning requirements that need to be met, but is this good community engagement where all parties are treated equally, encouraged to attend to have their voice heard, given a reasonable amount of notice and have access to the same transparent information? And in response to your question, we're committed as a council to making sure our community has every opportunity to learn more about this application. The Planning and Environment Act 1987 specifies that notice be given in 3 ways. Firstly, notice be given to owners and occupiers of adjoining land. Second, a sign be placed on the site. And third, an advertisement in the local paper. Due to the size of the proposed development, council officers and councillors have provided more extensive notice than required under the Act. We wrote to 93 nearby property owners and occupiers. An advertisement was placed in the Nagambie Community Voice. 2 signs were requested to be placed on the site. The application is on Council's website, and a fact sheet prepared and made available to the public. We also held an information session before Christmas to provide an alternate way for people to access information and be heard. After Christmas, we held a further drop-in session, which provided the opportunity for people to further share their views with councillors. The next step in the process before a decision is made by council is to invite submitters to a consultation meeting. This coming meeting allows those who have made a submission to have their thoughts and ideas and concerns further heard by councillors and officers should they wish. It is not for a decision. A decision on the application will be made at a formal council meeting in due course. Further, with regards to accessing information, the planning file is an open file. People can view this file. However, the documents within the file cannot be copied or shared. We've already had interested community members review the referral sponsors with a council officer, and this opportunity is available to those who seek to do the same through making a time through council. At tomorrow's meeting, a copy of these responses will also be available to view. Please note to date that Council's Planning Department are still waiting on further information to enable DELP and the Goulburn Broken Catchment Management Authority to make a formal position on the application, namely relating to native vegetation and how the jetties and proposed boat ramp would be constructed. Additionally, Goulburn Murray Water are yet to provide a response. These referral authority responses are an important component for officers to make a complete assessment of the application to assist in their recommendation to Council. I wish to assure you that Council has provided a number of opportunities for submitters to share their thoughts on this application, and that information is available for the community to view. Thank you, Darren. The second question, I will read the question and then I'm going to refer to Councillor Dickinson and Councillor Hayes-Burke to respond to. The second question we have received is from John Beresford of Tobolk, who attached an excerpt from the community engagement section of item 10.2 on page 373 of tonight's agenda. The excerpt from the council report, item 10.2. One of the overarching governance principles in section 9 of the Local Government Act 2020 is that the municipal community is to be engaged in strategic planning and strategic decision making. He highlights staff have not yet undertaken any community engagement around this climate emergency declaration. And community engagement was undertaken during the development of the Sustainable Strathbogie 2030 strategy, and engagement will be undertaken when the goals are developed as part of Council's emissions reduction pledge. He asks, why have Councillor Dickinson and Councillor Hayes-Burke tabled the motion of declaring a climate emergency before undertaking community engagement? And I hand over to you.
Oh, I'll get you. Are you reading? Are you answering the first part?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thank you. I'll answer. I'll put my case. We know there is some concern about this motion in our community, declaring a climate emergency. Councillor Hayes-Burke and I want to let you know we are listening, and we take this opportunity to explain why we believe leadership is needed on this issue. The climate change is undeniable. The global mean surface temperature of the Earth increased by around 0.9 degrees centigrade from 1880 to 2012. The rate of warming has been most rapid in the latter half of the 20th century. Since the 1980s, every decade has been warmer than in other decades since 1850, and each successive decade has been warmer than the previous. If action is not taken, we will see significant impacts in our Shire. This is not just about the present, it is about protecting the future for our children and their children. Increasing occurrences of extreme weather events will impact agriculture and tourism in our Shire. Hotter and drier conditions will create a loss of habitat, allowing pest plants and animals to outcompete the native species that we love so much in our region. Increasing heat will impact our energy and infrastructure, and increase air pollution and community health problems. Vulnerable communities are at a greater risk of sickness and death due to an increasingly unsafe climate. Now more than ever, it is important that we recognise that climate change presents an unprecedented challenge globally and locally. The planet's climate is changing, with dangerous heat waves, droughts, storms, and flooding becoming more intense and destructive. This motion will be addressed again later in the meeting. Over to you, Councillor Sully.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. I'd just like to add that the declaration of a climate emergency by Council demonstrates leadership in increasing awareness of the issue, identifying resources and instigating actions to mitigate against climate change. We want to send a clear message to our community that we are serious about mitigating against the risks of climate change for social, economic and environmental prosperity of our community. I would also like to take this opportunity to point out as part of our Share Strathbogie sessions that we are asking people to share their priorities on council services. Two of the 3 sessions we've recently held, Strathbogie and Avenel, have listed climate change as their top service priority area. And as I said earlier, we have read the comments on social media that deny climate change is an issue. We have heard the comments about a lack of community consultation. Our notice of motion clearly states that we will work with the community to develop a priorities and action plan. None of this changes the fact that our climate is changing, the impacts are catastrophic and leadership is needed.
Thank you, councillors. All right. I'll now explain what was going to happen before we go into our rest of the meeting. Tonight, we've got a number of objectors and applicants coming in to talk about their planning issues or approvals. I'll just go through. We have a number of objectors to planning permit application and planning permit applications wishing to address the meeting tonight. People wishing to speak are waiting outside in a social distance rooms and will be asked by officers to enter the room and make their presentation to council one at a time. Under Rule 33 of our governance rules, objectors to planning permit applications will be heard first. Applicant will be then heard. All parties have 5 minutes in which to speak. Where there are a group of objectors, we encourage a nominee to be elected to present the group's view. Council may ask questions of clarification to the submitter, but there will be no debate. Please bear with us during these presentations as there will be short delays in between speakers. So the first one is coming up is Officer Report 9.1, Planning Permit Application P 2020-115, use and development of land of 5 dwellings, 5 lot subdivision and creation of an easement at 38 to 40 River Street, Nagambie. I have 2 objectors wishing to speak this evening. One is Director Tingay. May we have a summary of the report, please? Sorry, Director Tingay.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. This proposal is for a 5-dwelling and 5-lot subdivision with the creation of an easement at 38 to 40 River Street, Nagambie. The application was advertised and 6 objections were received. The objections raised issues related to the character of the area, overdevelopment of the site and impact on infrastructure. The application is being heard before council due to the unresolved objections. The application has been assessed within the 60-day statutory timeframe. The proposal meets the objectives of the planning policy framework, local planning policy framework, the general residential zone, the floodway overlay and the land subject to inundation overlay. There is a recommendation starting on page 2 of the agenda for council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers? If not, can we have Julie Brooke please the first objector to come into the room. Thank you.
Okay. Do I have to sit down?
You can stand if you like, Julie. It's not a problem. You have 5 minutes to speak.
Oh, right. Well, my concern with the development in River Street is that I don't understand why you'd want to squash 3 townhouses onto a suburban block when there's a paddock at the back where there's going to be lots and lots of houses one day. And my main concern is the danger of adding what will be 10 cars coming in and out every day if you allow for the 2 houses on 40 and the 3 townhouses on 38. So there's already been approval years ago of, I think it's 27 and I can't remember, the very bottom of River Street opposite to 38 and 40. So there's 5 blocks have been approved there. So that's 5 driveways. So that cuts out all the most of the parking for anyone to go to the reserve. And that's 10 cars because they'll all have 2 cars and then they'll all have visitors. And everyone trying to get to the bottom of River Street is probably not even as wide as this room. So if there's cars parked legally, they can get around the bulb. But in the bulb, there will be a driveway now where the cars for the townhouses and the other houses will go in and out, obviously, daily. Already in River Street, people just drive down it all times of the day and night, just have a cruise, drive around. When it's summer, people like to park and go to the reserve. Once all these houses are approved and the infrastructure goes in of the driveways, there won't be anywhere for anyone to park on that side of the street. Anyone who wants to go to the River Street Reserve won't have anywhere to park. So they'll all be parked on the side of the road. We have no footpaths. We have trees and gardens on the verges. And the River Street I just don't believe will cope with the traffic. If you want to walk in River Street, you have to walk down the middle of the road because the road's on such a camber that if you have a pram or a walker or you're a tiny kid on a bike, there's nowhere else to go. So people park. So if you want to go out, you have to walk down the middle of the road. And there's never been a road counter, as far as I've been told, to prove how often the cars go down. So when the development's going on the north side, behind the north side of River Street, the trucks were going in and out, even though they were supposed to not go in and out. So I rang and I whinged and they stopped and they locked the gate. But it's just, to me, it's taking away the reserve from everyone. It is dangerous adding 20, possibly 20 cars daily to the bottom of this little street, which when there's cars parked there, you really can't even turn without backing and going around. And people park illegally anyway because they want to park closer. So they go down further. I mean, Mel, you know this street as well as anything. You park outside Amy's house and, you know, there'll be another one there, another one there. And, I mean, everyone deserves to be able to have visitors. So I won't be able to visit my kids. Well, I have to park on the grass. Like I said, maybe I could hire the grass out for people to park on the verge if they want to go down to the reserve. And the reserve is gorgeous. And I don't believe it's fair that having all this development is fair on the people that want to use it. And people use it daily. Doesn't matter if it's winter or summer. There were women having meetings down there. So there's 5 cars. I've sent photos of how many cars are there on a Tuesday afternoon. Heaps of them. And that's my concern. I've got a 3-year-old grandson. What if he runs out the front and doesn't stop? Because there's no footpath for him to think this is the end of my house. There's just the road and lots of cars and lots of parking. And it just really upsets me. And the 3 townhouse thing, that upsets me too. There's nothing like it in River Street. They want to put 2-storey houses smack bang against the house that's already there, which I know is progress, but colour bond fences That's not what you live in the country for, to have a colour-bomb fence in your face. 3 houses squashed on a block. 1 house on a block, lovely. 1 house in a garden and people living a normal life. But squashing 3 houses when the developer has more money than God is just, to me, is ridiculous, because it's got all of the paddock on the north.
30 seconds.
Okay, all of the paddock on the north where he's about to develop it. Why does he need to squash 3 houses that look nothing like anything in River Street onto 1 block of land? To be dangerous for me, because there's no footpaths. That I know they have to put footpaths in, but that's only in front of their tiny little blocks. And that's all it will be. And you've given permission to cut down a tree that's in front of 27, which has got lots of character.
Thank you.
And I don't understand that either. So,
Thank you very much.
so
I
I still
appreciate
have
it.
to pay for the tree that's not in my front yard.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
Thank
your submission.
Oh, I was going to ask her a question. That's okay.
No. Okay, there's Helen Miller has expressed an interest to speak, but however, she's unable to come tonight due to for unforeseen circumstances. So I'll read out her submission. This is very large and overpowering townhouse development will change the character of River Street and the community we live in. The size and the landscape of this development represents an imposing overdeveloped footprint across 2 blocks and within clear view of dwellings already located in this area, all of which are single dwellings on large reasonable size plots of land. The townhouse development plans to put 3 dwellings on a site that are originally a single block. This is totally disproportional to the surrounding structures in River Street and surrounding area. As I read it, one of the key objectives of the Nagambie Growth Plan is to plan residential developments that form a connect extension of existing community, imposing a very different and more densely populated provision right at the end of a street seems counterproductive with regard to this objective. The proposed housing development between High Street, Lobes Lane and the rear of River Street and the lake comprises single blocks on which envisage there will be 1 dwelling. I urge the council members to look at this plan and compare it in protection to the 2 blocks of 38 and 40 River Street. 3 apartments on 38 River Street planned to construct behind one another. This would mean the share fence line on the east becomes a double-storey wall at full length of my side fence. My property will be constantly overshadowed and dominated by these tall apartments that will be more appropriate in the inner Melbourne suburbs than in a quiet, peaceful waterside street of Nagambie. In my formal objection, you will have read of the concerns about the already inadequate water pressure in River Street, parking problems given the end of the street is a short court area, and concerns regarding the various serious environmental impacts, wildlife and vegetation. The environment on and around my property at 36 River Street will be changed forever. This will be distressing for me as the co-owner of the property, particularly as I plan to retire there very soon. In short, the impacts on me would be sorely felt and now and forever. Reduced sunlight in daylight, greater noise pollution, reduced water distribution, diminished bird life and habitat, an immediate surrounded feel of bulky buildings on my doorstep, reduction of native vegetation, increased artificial light at night, reduced sunlight at daytime, increased traffic and distinct possibility of loud, late social events. As councillors of the area, please try and picture these changes I will face if it goes ahead. From trees, vegetation, open space and wildlife to a wall of double-storey building running along the entire fence line on my simple dwelling. And whilst most of these points impact me personally because of its proximity, many of the others who have the same impact are on all local residents. This planning application is expected way too much from this site and this location. It will result in environmental, landscape and visual amenity impacts that are not acceptable to a small residential area of River Street, Nagambie. Thank you. And we now have got the applicant available to come in, please. Sorry for the delay, but we had to go and find the applicant.
Sorry, Jane's behind me somewhere.
Welcome. You have 5 minutes to speak to us. Thanks.
Thank you. So I'd just like to introduce myself. Jane Macy, I'm a Principal Town Planner with Spire, and I've been working with Chrissy McNeil and the team at CRC Constructions on this development application.
I'm Chrissy McNeil. I work for CRC Constructions, which is owned and managed by Jerry Ryan. CRC are passionate about Nagambie and they're significant and is a significant landowner. 38 to 40 River Street forms part of a series of integrated projects for the area of Nagambie.
Yeah. We understand that there is a briefing session booked with Mr Ryan for next week. So we're here today just to talk more specifically about this project at 38 to 40 River Street as you're considering it tonight. In looking at the two properties, Mr Ryan gave careful consideration to what the growing market in Nagambie was looking for, and that was looking for an alternative or a diverse range of housing opportunities, and hence he engaged an architect to prepare a proposal for 5 townhouse developments. He was also very mindful of the established residential community in there and requested that the design give response to the setting of the site, including the interface with the lake environments. And you can see there that there is a building exclusion zone, and that's been incorporated into the design and the layout of the townhouse development. The property is also, the development also provides some off-street public car parking. So up to 5 vehicles can park in the development, which are able to be parked on by public people who wish to access the end of River Street or the nearby public open spaces. So it's not exclusive just to residents who live there, it is open to the public. The proposal also fully integrates with the proposed residential development that's also going to be established by Mr Ryan to the north, subject to obviously rezoning and further planning approvals. But the driveway into the property is actually a declared road and will provide only pedestrian and cycle access from River Street into the main open space of that new development there. So no vehicular access. It is a declared road though for servicing arrangements only, and that will provide some pedestrian access between River Street and the public open space area. Importantly, the proposal is consistent with the general residential zone, which is the zone that council has applied to that residential area of Nagambie. It complies with the requirements of Res Code in terms of setbacks, overlooking, overshadowing, built form objectives, and the finishes and materials of the development as well. It's consistent with the provisions and the intended outcomes of the Strathbogie planning scheme in terms of providing housing diversity and opportunities for new forms of housing in an established residential area. It represents efficient use of the land and efficient use of the existing infrastructure that is located within River Street and the surrounds. And for these reasons, we think that it's a really appropriate development for this site. It's an exciting opportunity of some new housing diversity in River Street and in this area. And for these reasons, we respectfully request council support for this planning permit application.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Haysbert.
Thank you. So sorry, I just wanted to clarify the road going through, you're saying it's a carriage, it's just for pedestrians and cyclists, but it'll be for the cars accessing their...
Yes, accessing their residences, so their homes, but you can't drive from River Street into the new development to the north. So it needs to be a road for servicing of infrastructure, namely the water. So the water infrastructure needs to sit in a road according to Golden Valley Water. So it will be a declared road to provide public to get in and out of the public car parking spaces, residents to get into their homes, but no public vehicular access between the two, just pedestrian and cycle links.
Okay, so there's a proposed open space at the end of that.
That's right, yeah. I did have I should have printed it out. I thought I'd be able to put it up on the screen just to show where it sits in relation to that development to the north. But the major open space wraps around the inlet that comes in off the lake there, and it contains walking paths, an area of like a half-court basketball, picnic areas. So that will be the major open space area through there.
Thanks.
Okay, any other councillors got any questions or clarification needed? No, thank you very much for your submission.
Yep. Thanks for the opportunity.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, councillors, we have a motion on 9.1 to use the development of land of 5 dwellings at 38 to 40 River Street, Nagambie. Do I have someone like to move a motion, please? Move Councillor Hayes-Burke.
I'd like to move the motion generally in accordance with the officer's recommendation, but I'd like to amend condition 6 to read as follows.
Okay.
Shall I read that out now?
Yes, please.
It's with regards to fencing, 6.6, prior to the issue of a statement of compliance for the subdivision or the commencement of the use for the dwelling, whichever comes first, the permit holder must fence at its own cost the boundary of the allotment abutting the public land in accordance with the endorsed plans. Apart from the sections identified for 1.8 metre high fencing, this fence must be of an open style in satisfaction of the responsible authority. For the sections of the fencing that are 1.8 metres high, they must be constructed from natural products and be sympathetic and respect the public land. That's, yes, for the fence abutting the public land.
Thank
Hope
you,
that's clear.
Councillor Hayes-Burke. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Murray. All right, Councillor Hayes-Burke, would you like to speak on this motion? Thanks.
I'd just like to say that we did take into concern all the objections on this matter, and it is difficult when you live in an area that becomes highly desirable. I guess as a general rule, creating high density closer to town centres creates a more vibrant, livable town. And I think it would be great if all developments could have a positive impact on the environment in which they lie. I take note of the traffic concerns around parking, and I think that this development poses good grounds for the construction of a footpath all the way down River Street so that there aren't those safety concerns. And I'd like to also note that it would be helpful to see a landscape plan for this proposal so we could see what was proposed to be planted on the reserve, because that is a very important piece of land to the public, and residents are concerned about the loss in vegetation. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Lykos?
I'd just like to second what Councillor Hayes-Burke has talked about in regards to being sympathetic to the concerns of the residents there, and hopefully getting a footpath and making it a safer road for visitors and the residents.
Thank you, Councillor Deputy Mayor Lykos. Councillor Dickinson.
Thank you, Mayor. I did note that there were a few objectors who mentioned the water pressure, and I took the opportunity and spoke to a Mr. Kerins at GV Water, who assured me that the water pressure wouldn't be affected for the existing residents, and in fact it could be enhanced.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Any other comments? If not, all those in favour? All those against? Declare it carried. Okay, 9.2, page 57. Planning application P 2020-140, two-lot subdivision, use of land and development of land for a dwelling on 239 Cows Lane, Euroa.
Through you, Mayor, the conflict of interest. I'll be leaving the room.
Thank you. Okay, Director Tingay.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. The proposal is for a two-lot subdivision, house lot excision, and the use and development of the land for a dwelling. The site has an area of 24.98 hectares. The site is in the farming zone and is affected in part by both the land subject to inundation overlay and the floodway overlay. The application was referred internally and externally to a number of departments who have consented the proposal subject to conditions. The application is being presented to council as the proposal is for the development of a dwelling less than 80 hectares. The application was advertised to adjoining landowners and one objection has been received. The application was before council on the 19th of January 2021 and was deferred to enable councillors to give consideration to the objection that was actually received on the day of the meeting. There is a recommendation commencing on page 58 of the agenda for council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, any question of Director Tingay? We have no one speaking here tonight. Would someone like to move the recommendation being put forward? Councillor Lykos, you are moving the motion which has been recommended in the... Thank you. Someone like to second it? Councillor Murray. All right, Councillor Lykos, would you like to speak on this issue? Thank you. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak?
No.
Okay, any other people would like to talk about this? Councillor Binks.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. This is, I think, highlighted for me a real need to have a review of our planning scheme because we are seeing an increase in a change of use of the land closer to our townships, which is to be expected in the environment we live in. We've got a beautiful area and people are wanting to build on smaller farming lots. Because this sits in the farming zone, sort of fitting into that with what is proposed here is quite a tricky thing. And so I guess for me, it reflected the need for us as a council to set aside both the time and the finances to review our planning scheme and look at our planning zones. I know that there was a report, a rural residential study done in 2004, which hasn't been applied, and so I think we need to look at that as a matter of urgency to address this increase of what I'd call sort of tricky and conflicting planning applications that are coming before us. So as a way to sort of create a fair and equitable way forward for planning applications in the future, it's just something I guess I would like to raise, and this application in particular drew my attention to that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Any other councillor would like to speak? If not, all those in favour of the motion? All those against? Declare it carried. Can you invite Councillor Horrigan back in? Thank you. Right, next one is 9.3, planning permit application 2020-086, development of land of 4-lot stage subdivision and creation of access at 12 Watson Street, Avenel. Director Tingay, can you inform us of this, please?
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. Before us tonight is the proposal for a 4-lot stage subdivision at 12 Watson Street, Avenel. The application was advertised, and through that process, 2 objections were received. The objections raised issues relating to native vegetation, character of the area and impact on infrastructure. This application is being heard before Council tonight due to the unresolved objections. The original application was received by Council in July 2020. The application was amended in December 2020 as a result of objections to the change of the layout. The application was again amended in January 2021 to include staging of the development. The proposal meets the objectives of the Planning Policy Framework, Local Planning Policy Framework and the Township Zone. There is a recommendation commencing on page 85 of the agenda for Council's consideration tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officer, please? If not, we do have one objector who would like to speak. We did have a number of objectors, so one person is coming to speak to us tonight about this issue.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think the others are going to see. Yeah, my husband. Yeah, okay, no worries. Hello.
Welcome. You've got 5 minutes to put your case forward.
Yes, so
Thank
we're
you.
speaking to the Watson Street.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak to this permit application. I'm speaking on behalf of the household at 54 Livingstone Street in Avenel, which includes my husband Bernard. Further, I'm speaking on behalf of Mr. Ian Chittenden at 6 Watson Street in Avenel. Ian is our immediate next door neighbour and, like us, faces the proposed development boundary along Livingston Street. So we were made aware of this application in August 2020 via council letter advising us of the permit application and giving us the right to object. The initial proposal was different to the current proposal, still for a 4-lot subdivision with the owner remaining on lot 4, facing Anderson Street. I trust that you will have the plans or you will have seen the plans. However, the 3 new lots to be sold separately were all to directly face us in a block-like manner on Livingston Street. 2 of the lots were to have driveways exiting opposite us at 54 Livingston Street. The new lots were to be an average size of only 742 square metres each, so I averaged them. So the plan for this, plan looked to us like a very dense development, and it was unclear to us at the time how this was in keeping with the amenity and ambience of the neighbourhood, which is why we objected initially. I just want to make very clear, I know that this is being live streamed, so I hope that the applicants will also see this, that our objection at the time was not against the idea of any kind of development, but against the proposal in the shape in which it was presented to us at the time. I do want to make this point very clearly in a public forum, as there's been a lot of stress associated with this council planning process in the form of us being contacted through a range of mediums and channels by a range of people, making very clear that the community was very angry at us participating in the council process. So this took the form of us being personally accosted and insulted, being told that us newcomers have no right to comment and that we are against progress in town and against all form of development. There's also been yelling and abuse, and there has been one instance of quite worrying physical violence, which appears connected with the objection to the original proposal, which we reported to the police. Therefore, before I move on to our further comments, I'd like to ask the community and all parties involved from now on to focus on finding a solution, which is what we've always wanted, and for us all to listen to each other, because we all are living in the same town and we want to live in peace and find a good solution. So the additional points, and also we would like to say that we're not as such against the format of the current amended proposal, so it's much better than what it was originally, and we acknowledge that, but we have some additional points to make for the councillors to consider, which go to the broader context. So regarding density, we got some advice from a town planning firm unrelated to this case, just to help us understand the situation in the context of town planning practices. And they advised us that the average size of subdivisions in Avenel as traditionally practiced currently, in 90% of the cases, is 1,000 square metres or more. In fact, it appears that it's traditionally around 1,500 square metres. So the current proposal with one lot at 898 square metres and one at 759 in stage 2 is below this. So therefore they said it is an irregular, or it's a departure from traditional practices. And also in one of the correspondence letters that we received from the principal planner, she acknowledged that this proposal is for lots that are smaller than traditionally found in the area. So what we're trying to say in relation to that is that whilst we are aware that this permit is likely going to be granted, we would like an acknowledgement from council that this is going to set a precedent along with some of the other developments that are currently proposed, and that council needs to be aware of this and understand that a precedent for smaller subdivisions within very small limited areas, that this precedent is going to be set. And so that if we all accept and acknowledge that change is coming to Avenel and that there is strong population and housing growth, as it would appear, does this in turn mean that Avenel deserves council infrastructure
30
to go
seconds.
with that new area?
30 seconds.
30 seconds with that new era.
Why not?
It's all right, it's all right, it's okay. So that's been our second key point, is that we would like it to be considered that with increasing density of development, we need to have the infrastructure to support it. So we're talking about drainage, we're talking about making safe a currently unsafe, a very deep open drain ditch, and also traffic control, just so that in future we can all live there and have the amenity.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. No,
Okay.
really appreciate it.
So we did have some further points to make. So would someone else out of the group be able to speak or not?
No. Sorry, we only gave 5, but we'll ask councillors if you've got any questions or you would like of the objectors, or a clarification, if you may.
Happy to answer any questions or talk to any of the points. We had some suggestions as to what could further change the amenity or improve.
All right. Yes, Councillor Lockhouse.
Thanks, Anna. I was just like, what sort of, do you have an idea of the infrastructure you like specifically talking about and wanting?
Yes,
Can you
absolutely
just talk on that?
So with drainage, basically guttering and pipes. So it would be quite feasible to install piping to take the water that currently floods Livingston Street as soon as it rains, to take that across an easement through the park to Hughes Creek, which is where it wants to go. So we're essentially on a bit of a slope, and so all the water that comes off any new developments opposite us will flow naturally in our direction, and it's currently already pretty bad. So our front yard and part of our property is turned into a lake. And so as you want to have more developments and more infill, I think it would be much easier, rather than doing piecemeal solutions, to basically just design pipes and guttering to solve the problem. And I think that would be in line with modern engineering techniques. With regards to the traffic specifically, because there's a lot of speeding on Livingston Street, it's got a limit of 60k an hour, whereas across on Anderson Street it's only 50. So that's another thing that needs to be considered, I think, and we could write letters about that just to explain. And there's the primary school direct diagonally opposite us. So what would really help to make the one new driveway that's going to exit onto Livingston Street and our driveways much safer, and also for the children of the school, is to have traffic cameras. So we get a lot of speeding late at night with trucks, just because that's the main thoroughfare, Livingston. And if you had traffic cameras, that would be a fantastic deterrent to trucks and vehicles to speeding basically. Especially in winter, you get a lot of fog, you get a lot of cloud. So particularly with us exiting, it's not that safe anyway. So when you're adding more development, just consider that having a deterrent to speeding would be really good. Speed bumps are a little bit controversial and people need to be consulted because they can be noisy, but it's another option that's on the table. Traffic cameras would not be noisy and would already, I think, be a significant deterrent. So that's, I think, with drainage and traffic control would make a huge difference and will create a more, just more modern infrastructure for this infill development. And also, the last thing we wanted to say is what would really, really help us with this development, it's directly opposite our house, is for the duration of the build along the boundary fence on Livingston Street, a tall 1.8 metre colour-bond fence. And if the applicants could find it in their heart to consider that, it would be a huge gesture towards us and it would really help us during the builds. So I think it's a reasonable point.
Thank you very much. Pleasure, I appreciate.
Any other questions?
Councillors? If not, thank you.
Okay, no worries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, councillors, you've got a planning permit 9.3 2020-86 for the development of land of 4-lot stage subdivision and creation of access, 12 Watson Street, Avenel. Do I have someone who'd like to move the motion as printed? Please. Councillor Murray, you move that way. Someone like to second it? Thank you. Councillor Horrigan, thank you. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak? Thank you.
I'd like to move the motion that we accept the officer's recommendation in this planning matter.
Yep.
And I make that, I move that motion on the basis that I believe the applicant has made numerous amendments to their application to take into consideration some of the concerns that that local residents have and the objectors have in this matter. And I believe the planning application now is a reasonable one and an appropriate one for this particular site. Thank you.
Thanks to you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Horrigan, would you like to speak?
Through you, Mayor, I would also like to second what Councillor Murray has said. I'd also like to add I am sympathetic with the objectors and what they're talking about with their drainage, and obviously it is a big issue in Avenel and it is an issue that we are recognising. I'd also just like to refer everyone to page number 87 with point 7 that's on there, where we are actually putting in detail from the responsible authorities, you know, what detailed works we want in regards to drainage for subdivision lots. And so I hope that this helps. I hope this answers their question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Any other councillor like to speak? If not, councillors, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. Thank you. Okay, next one is 9.4, page 119, 2020-069, development of land of 11-lot subdivision at 30 to 38 Hovell Street, Avenel. Director Tingay.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. The proposal tonight before you now is for an 11-lot subdivision and removal of native vegetation, 1 tree, within the township zone at 30 to 38 Hovell Street in Avenel. The application was advertised and through that process 7 objections were received, with 1 objection being withdrawn. The objections raised concerns around the character of the area and impact on infrastructure. The application is being heard before council tonight due to the unresolved objections. The proposal meets objectives of the planning policy framework, local planning policy framework, the township zone and the airport enviros overlay. There is a recommendation commencing on page 120 of the agenda for council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, do you have any question of the officer? If not, We have several objectors who would like to speak tonight, and also the applicant. So we'll listen to the objectors first. And I believe there's 5 objectors. 4 will be presenting here tonight, and I'll be reading out the 5th one. Okay, welcome. You have 5 minutes to tell us your story, sir.
Thank you. My name's Troy Spencer. I'm a town planning consultant here in Euroa, also born and bred in Avenel, and very familiar with the location in question, having ridden a bike and a horse up and down those areas all my life until I moved here. And I think that by getting asked by some of the people that currently have their residence in the street, also people who are related to me, but other people I don't know who also wanted some planning advice, I was able to review the proposal as put forward. Now, some may know that being a town planner, I also put applications forward, but when I do, I generally look at things, past strategies. I certainly look at and are familiar. If I'm not familiar with them, I certainly go looking for strategies or studies that help, I guess, paint a picture of what the future design or what the future is going to be for that area. So in this application, in this proposal, the first thing I noticed that stuck out to me were battle axe blocks. Battle axe blocks are the ones that look like they've got a handle, they're a driveway. They're not out of place in some situations. They're certainly really, really, a good tool when you're doing such things as infill development. If you've got a home and you can't get to the back of it, but it's a wasted space and we want to increase the residential capabilities of a place, by all means, they're great. When you've got a brand new piece of land or a piece of land that's sitting there ready to be subdivided, what we usually do is we certainly don't design them to have battle axes, because all they do is stop a street frontage, the person from having a safe outlook to their property. And all this is in the planning scheme. Like Clause 56 says, you've got to have a safe entrance, you've got to have walkability, you've got to be able to visualise through. I mean, these ones are so far back. All they do to me or say to me is that this was an extra bit of a grab because of the way they've designed it. They wanted to get extra small lots and then put these big ones at the back. It's created 8 entrances out onto a skinny little dirt road. And I know that there's conditions in there that says, we're going to get a traffic impact assessment report. But really, traffic impact assessment report tells you things before you make a decision on it. It really should have been obtained. The other thing I noted too, though, was that also there's a condition in there to say that the applicant has an opportunity to either pay for 50% or put the infrastructure in. And I guarantee they're not going to put the infrastructure in. They're going to pay 50%. And like all subdivisions, they take 2 to 5 years in a lot of instances to happen. 2 to 5 years from now, it's a lot more money that we're going to pay ourselves as people that live here to something that they should have paid for in the first place. So not against subdivision, not against the people that I'm representing know that it's going to be subdivided. It's a great thing for the town. The town's moving at such a rapid rate at the moment with things that are just starting to occur. The supply is not there for the demand. I get that. But what we need to do is we need to go back to neighbourhood character. We need to have a look at what the planning scheme and what the studies say. One of the studies says really that this should be rezoned. It says to implement a general residential zone in this location and put a development plan overlay over it so that it's not just these once-off people that come on and want to subdivide. It's the collective land around it, so how they work in together in the future. So when someone comes in and says, I'm going to do this, you say, no worries, we've got a plan for that. This place here relies on your place for future access. Or this, we don't, calculate how many accesses you might get out on this road and work out what the infrastructure would be in the long term, not just for this little one. So, yeah, I don't know if I've spoken more too long, but
you're okay.
They're the key things. And it's not rocket science. These are the things that you have to do particularly in Avenel, because it's not a well-designed town. It was never developed that way. It's hit and miss. Bank Street was always the main street in the old days, and now it's another street. And we all know that it's higgledy-piggledy. The railway line sort of cuts it a little bit, and then the creek stops us, and there's another piece of town on the other side. So what we've got is we've got some strategies that are all
30 seconds.
sitting on shelves. All of them tell us how we've already participated as community members in all these studies. They're just sitting on the shelf somewhere. They're not that old. Nothing much has happened. The character hasn't changed much since 2009. The 2030 study, not 2030 yet, these things have recommendations in them. I think we need to open them up, look at them, get them in the planning scheme, get some strategic planning happening, and this sort of thing won't happen. It won't be a question to a developer. They'll just look at it and go, that's what I've got to do.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Pleasure. Councillors, do you have any clarification or questions?
Through you, Mayor, Troy, I just want to clarify with your, I suppose, with your objection. It's you're not objecting to it actually being subdivided as per se, just the current plan that's been put to us. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other councillors want to ask any questions? Councillor Murray?
Troy, do you believe this planning application will affect the local drainage of this in this area?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked because I forgot to mention it. I did have a copy of a planning permit that I obtained, which I bought a copy of, for Hobble Street, and the requirements for it are very different for the requirements for this one, and it's only 2 years ago. And the person never went through with that 4-lot subdivision because what they were required to do was put the stormwater drainage to the Hughes Creek, which was not cost effective. This one here doesn't say anything. It's not specific. We don't know, they don't know what they are up for.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions or clarification? If not, thank you very much
Thank
for
you,
your
everybody.
pleasure. Now I know who you are, Troy. No, he's not coming back. He's one. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and you have 5 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, I should move across. I'd also like to apologise. My husband's not here tonight. He's not well, so I'm carrying the flag. The subdivision on the corner of Hobble Street and Ferguson Lane is what I'm worried about. I live at number 26 Ferguson Lane. I will be the first property past the end of any bitumen that may come down with the subdivision. The traffic is very difficult to manage now because it's an unmade road, very ripply and doesn't get graded very often. So we're worried about the extra traffic that will come from an 11-lot subdivision. Traffic will increase probably by about 80%, just a guess. And then when Hughes Creek is all built out, Hughes Creek Estate is all built out as well, there'll be a lot more traffic using Veerings Road and Hobble Street as well, which is going to deteriorate quicker. So we're going to have extra issues with all the traffic there. Even though council stipulate the 60k zone, apparently it's up to the police to police that. The Gambia police tell us they've got no hope whatsoever because they do not have the manpower to follow that up. So it's just going to be open season with the traffic. So that's a very big issue because only half the road's going to be done. I've heard other people say this evening about drainage in Avenel. There is none. My road quite often disappears under maybe 20 mils of rain. The corner of our road where the subdivision will be also disappears under the rain, under the puddles for perhaps 3 or 4 days at a time. There's no drainage at all. I don't know how that's going to be managed. Everybody says with an engineering certificate it'll all be managed on site. But when we got like 2 inches of rain in February, there was just nowhere for it to go. It was just everywhere. So it's a calculated risk that it can be managed on site, but I don't have a lot of faith that that will happen. It's bad enough now without anything else as well. 11 blocks on 5 acres just seems to be too many for that end of town. It's not in the spirit of the area. It's sort of not in the spirit of the neighbourhood character either, or the study that went through the neighbourhood character study. The Avenel 2030 plan says everything can be subdivided in that area, but 11 blocks on 5 acres on unmade roads with poor drainage doesn't sit well. To make the roads wide enough to be safe enough to council's plans, so I've been told they've got to be wide enough for council's plans. I don't know how big that is. I can't seem to get definition of that. I don't know how many trees they're going to have to take out, and some of them are substantial trees. The one right on the corner is so big it could be 200 or 300 years old. I don't know if it has any sort of Indigenous significance or anything like that, because I don't know if there's any plans done for that side of town about that. It's a huge tree, and I'd hate that anything happened to that. There's habitat trees as well. Some of them will have to go because the width of the road, the width of the drains, it's an unknown how many trees are we going to lose. And unless we had emailed on a continual basis trying to keep in touch with what was happening with council, unless we instigated it, we were not hearing anything back from council. And until we got an email the other day saying it was coming tonight and we could make a presentation, if we hadn't been following up, we wouldn't have known what was going on. So there's a poor communication. I know everybody's busy and all that, but on things when people have objected, I think there should be some address made to those who are objecting. We would just expect something better from a subdivision in town than this. It just doesn't seem right. 8 driveways onto small, narrow Ferguson Lane with no drainage, and the bitumen will end at night just before my gateway. So what happens to all the water?
30 seconds.
Sorry?
30 seconds.
Thank you. If all the water comes past, my road's going to disappear. I'm greatly disadvantaged because I will just be left with the plain old ungraded road. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Councillors, do you have any questions or comments you'd like to make? Yes, Councillor Horrigan.
Thanks so much, Wendy.
Thank you.
I do have a quick question, or possibly even 2. Are you objecting because of the subdivision or because of the way or the layout of the subdivision?
The layout of the subdivision.
Okay, and my next question was, were you ever asked or has it ever been invited for you to speak with the current developer or the applicant?
We did offer to have a meeting with them, and he was not accepting of that idea.
Thank you.
That's okay, thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? If not, thank you very much for your submission.
Thank you very much for your time this evening. It's much appreciated.
Pleasure. Thank you.
So you've got a tough job, but I do appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. So that means Graham won't be speaking. Is that right, Wendy?
Sorry, no, he's not speaking.
Okay, thank you.
It's not right.
Pleasure. Thank you. No. Yeah, Rod Jones. Is there? He's not there, Rod? Rodney? All right. If Rod's not here, I've got one objection from Jan and Peter Russ. As we're unable to attend this evening, can you please read out at the meeting? We object to the proposal planning application P 2020-069 30 to 38 Hovell Street, Avenel for an 11 lot subdivision. Number 1, the size of development, 11 lots, is out of character in this rural residential area. The current average for this area is 5 lots to 5 acres or less, which is acceptable within the character and keeping of this area. The proposal has neglected to satisfy the recommendations of the Strathbogie planning scheme and associated planning reports in its application. The number of proposed lots is out of character for the area, and if allowed will set a precedent for others to do the same, thus changing the entire character of this western side of the township of Avenel. 2, water dispersal in this area is already a major ongoing problem. As it stands, the water dispersal in Farrell Place and into Hovel Street is being addressed by the Strathbogie Shire Works Department. They have stated there is nowhere for the water to go. It is only shifting the problem from one position in Hovel Street to another. This is a classic example of inadequate initial planning for water dispersal in this area and leaves the issue and expense for the ratepayers to absorb when the developers are long gone. The flooding on the roads, Hovel Street, Verning Road, makes these roads unsafe and impassable at times. 3, trees. A condition of this proposal, if granted, is the upgrade of Ferguson Lane roadway and installation of a footpath. This is involved the removal of substantial, enormous old indigenous trees and habitat trees which are hundreds of years old and can never be replaced. We have just witnessed the removal of a row of the same old trees from the new estate at Bank Street. In reference to our objection last year, September 2020, we received a letter 16/12/2020 from Melissa Crane stating we would be invited to a planning committee meeting to discuss our objection to this proposed subdivision. We heard nothing until we phoned the Shire Planning Department seeking an update last Tuesday. 30 minutes after our phone call, we were advised by email that the proposed application is going to council on the 16th of March with the review to grant a permit. We and others have been denied an opportunity to meet and be heard. Therefore, we request a decision on this application be deferred and returned to the Planning Department. Yours faithfully, Jan and Peter Ross. Thank you. Right, now we have the applicant available to come in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We have 5 minutes to speak.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We've worked for 9 months with your planning department. They're excellent people. I've only done this job for 50 years and your planning department's about as good as they come. We thrashed out all the articles, all the bits and pieces, went through all the bits with the engineers, the junior planners, the senior planners, and you've read the report. I can't really add much. It's just a slog to get in front of you guys with a recommendation from your planners to approve. I really don't have much to say.
Okay. Councillors, do you have any questions or comments you want to make to the applicant? Yes, Councillor Horrigan.
It's Mark. Yes, thank you for coming. Mark, I have a question that probably requires a quick answer. Have you met with any of the objectors?
Met with?
Any of the objectors?
No.
Have you been invited to meet with any of the objectors to talk about it? No invitation there?
Not like, I may have been, I don't know. Melissa may have invited me, but I wouldn't meet with them, no.
All right. Is there a reason why you wouldn't meet with the objectors?
Again, I've only ever done one job in my whole life, and that's 50 years of this, and I've never had a productive meeting with objectors. Okay. I've always sat on this side of the table in pro-development, and in all the years I've never had a successful meeting. So the last sort of 10 or 15 years I won't meet with them.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other councillor would like to? Councillor Murray.
Hiya, Mark. Are you aware of the objectors, the basis of the objections that some residents have got? Okay.
I've answered what objections were tabled, and I think you've got my answers there. They're in part of the list's report. I really didn't want to come tonight, but I was talked into it.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments, councillors? If not, thank you, Mark, for attending. We appreciate it very much.
Good. Thank you. You've got a very good planning department.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, councillors, there's a recommendation being put forward on page 120. Someone like to move that recommendation, please? Councillor Murray.
Mayor, I would like to wish to move a motion to refuse the application with the wording to be as follows, and I'll read the motion.
Thank you.
That council, having caused notice of planning application number P20200069 to be given under section 52 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, and having considered all matters required under section 60 Planning and Environment Act 1987, decides to issue a refusal to grant a permit under the provisions of clause 32.05 Township Zone and 45.02 Airport Environs Overlay of the Township of the Strathbogie Planning Scheme in respect to the land known Crown Allotment 7, Section A, Parish of Avenel, Certificate of Title Volume 10139, Folio 994, 30 to 38 Hovell Street, Avenel, Victoria 3665, for the development of land for the 11-lot subdivision on the following grounds. 1. The proposal is not in accordance with clause 15.015S, neighbourhood character, and it does not respond to the preferred character of the area. 2. The proposal is not in accordance with clause 21.03-1 Avenel, as it does not reflect the low density layout of the township. And 3, the density of the subdivision fails to meet clause 56.03-5 neighbourhood character objective, as it does not respect the character of the existing neighbourhood. And 4, the proposal constitutes an overdevelopment of the site. And 5, the proposal would result in the detrimental effect on the amenity of the neighbourhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder of the motion? Councillor Deputy Mayor Lykos. All right, Councillor Murray, you have time to speak.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. I believe this particular development is inappropriate for this particular area. I believe that this area is very significant in that most of these blocks in the neighbourhood are large. They have people on them who moved there for a rural lifestyle. They are on narrow roads, dirt roads, which are tree-lined, and for those reasons, I believe this development is inappropriate. I'd also like to point out the fact that the size of the blocks in this development, many of them are about 1,200 square metres, and I believe they're too small for this particular location, and that they fail to reflect the character density of this part of the Avenel Township. Further, I think the proposed development undermines the amenity of this particular site and would create an unnecessary burden on the local residents in terms of the infrastructure of the area, particularly in light of the drainage issues in this particular area and traffic volumes. I think that's another aspect which I'm concerned about, and the native vegetation in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Lykos.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to add and second what Paul has said, and just to add to that, listening to the objectors, I think their objections are relevant. I'm disappointed that the developer has decided not to meet with them or really understand what their objections are, which, as they all said, as Councillor Horrigan asked, they are not against the development, but just the style in which it's been presented. And I would encourage them to go back and look at a different way that they can do this. I think the safety on the road is a very relevant point that the objectors make. And yeah, it would be nice to have the developer be a little bit more open to listening to the objectors and what their concerns are, as they're the ones living there. So thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Horrigan.
Through you, Mayor, thank you. I'd like to second Councillor Lykos. And I do actually want to make a quick statement that the purpose of a township zone within the Victorian planning provision states, and I'll just read one instead of the whole thing, to provide for residential development and a range of commercial, industrial and other uses in small towns. And it's also to encourage development that respects the neighbourhood character of the area. So I do want to make note that I understand it's within a township zone. However, I do support Councillor Murray and the reason for it being rejected. But I also would like to really point out to everyone that I'd like to see applicants making an effort with objectors to work together to come out with outcomes. And as Councillor Lykos said, I did ask the question to each objector, and neither of them were objecting against subdivision, and perhaps that on this occasion there may not be an alternative. However, it's important to give the objectors time. And it's important to meet with them during that, and perhaps we would have seen a different plan come to council, perhaps. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Any other comments? If not, all those in favour of the motion which has been put forward? All those against? Declare it carried. Okay, 9.5. Page 156, Planning Permit Application 2020-148, Use and Development of Land for a Dwelling at number 158 Blaney Lane, Nagambie. Director Tingay.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. This application is for a dwelling at 1/58 Blaney Lane, Nagambie. The application was advertised and one objection was received. The objection raised concerns in relation to the character of the area and overdevelopment of the site. The application is being heard before council due to the unresolved objections. The proposal meets the objectives of the Planning Policy Framework, Local Planning Policy Framework and the Commercial One Zone. There is a recommendation commencing on 157 of tonight's agenda for council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officer? If not, there is no one coming in to talk about this tonight. Councillors, are a mover of the recommendation on page 157. Someone like to move? Councillor Horrigan, move. Is there anyone like to second it? Councillor Binks. Councillor Horrigan, you have the floor.
Through you, Mayor, there's nothing for me to talk about on this one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Binks.
Whilst it's not necessarily specific to the proposal, it is again this planning permit before us tonight again drew our attention to the need for our planning scheme review within the Shire and just getting a better fit for our growing communities. So thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Binks. Anyone else like to speak? Councillor Dickinson.
I'd like to speak against this motion. I think that this is set in a commercial zone, and so very little can be done about the planning because everything is in place. However, my concern is for safety when that house is going to be built exactly where the existing one is now, 2.1 metres from the road, which in itself presents a hazard. There is no footpath and the roadway was only 2.1 metres away. This is a two-storey building and the top part of the buildings for entertainment purposes, and I think that's quite imposing on not just passing motor traffic, but passing foot traffic, because that's where the people walk, is alongside that road. So they're just commenting on Councillor Binks there. Okay, it falls within the planning zone, but the planning zone needs to be looked at, I think. Zone? Is that the right word? Yeah?
Yes, Councillor Dixon.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Anyone else, any other councillor would like to speak? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. Okay, page 187, 9.6, planning permit application P 2020-065, use and development of land for a dwelling at 437 Creek Junction Road, Kithbrook. Director Tingay, I nearly called you councillor.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. The proposal is for a dwelling at 437 Creek Junction Road in Kithbrook. The application was advertised and no objections have been received. The application is being heard before council due to the dwelling being on a small lot in the farming zone. The proposal meets the objectives of the planning policy framework, local planning policy framework, the farming zone and the erosion management overlay. There is a recommendation commencing on page 188 of the agenda for council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillor, do you have any questions of the officer? Thanks. If not, the applicant was going to speak, now has declined. Councillors, there is a recommendation from the officers on page 188. Is there a councillor wishing to move that motion? Councillor Binks. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hayes-Berg. Councillor Binks, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mayor. Just noting that this house is a replacement of one that was lost in a fire. They had applied for a rebuild and that planning permit lapsed, and so they're reapplying for it. So I think there's general consensus that it is a fair and reasonable planning determination. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Binks. Councillor Hayes-Berg. Okay, any other councillor would like to speak? If not, all those in favour? Against, declare it carried. Thank you. Okay, the next one is page 208, 9.7, planning permit application P 2017. Wow. 121, use and development of land for group accommodation, 4 new accommodation buildings, completion of 1 accommodation building and an administration building, manager's residence and a multi-purpose shed, development of land for field side shelter and shearing shed, 1208 Reedy Lake Road, Wuru. Director Tingay.
I'll just note I'll be leaving the room because I have a general conflict of interest.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Berg. Now you have to turn your thing back on. Director Tingay, I'll leave it in your hands. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. The proposal in front of us now is for the use and development of land for additional group accommodation with supporting management infrastructure and a shelter and shearing shed at 1208 Reedy Lake Road, Roo. The application was originally submitted in November 2017 with more accommodation and a proposal to have events on the site, including music festivals. After meetings with the permit applicant, the proposal was amended on the 9th of December 2020 to be for the additional group accommodation and supporting facilities as currently proposed. The original objection was advertised with 2 objections received. The amended proposal was also notified and both original objections remained as initially submitted. The objections raised concerns in relation to potential conflict of use with farming activities. The application is being heard before council due to the unresolved objections. The proposal meets the objectives of the Planning Policy Framework, Local Planning Policy Framework, the Farming Zone and the Bushfire Management Overlay. There is a recommendation commencing on page 209 of the agenda for council's consideration this evening. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Director Tingo. Councillors, do you have any questions? Councillor... Any councillor have any questions of the Director? If not, we do have a person coming in to speak as the applicant. Ms. Welcome, sir. You have 5 minutes to put your case forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to talk to this application. The property that you're looking at or considering has a history of some group accommodation activity going back to planning permit in 2008, and prior to that, it was. There was, I think back in 2003, there was some activity in relation to charity events for polo and so on. So the property's been used for farming right through that period and will continue to be used for farming, but in conjunction with group accommodation. And the applicant in this case wants to develop that tourism opportunity on his property, but also continue with the farming. That's part of. He wants to create a group accommodation retreat, and farming and the exposure to agriculture is part of that experience. The application's been through some changes because the property has it's about, I suppose, 2/3 cleared land, and about a third of it is bushland adjacent to the reserve. And originally, he was proposing to have some group accommodation within the bushland area, but we've changed that over time because we felt that it would be better to adopt an avoidance approach in terms of the location of the group accommodation buildings. So 3 of them are outside the bushfire management overlay, and one building is within the bushfire management overlay, but in a naturally cleared area, so we can meet the defendable space area around it. So the avoidance of native vegetation, we think, is a plus in this application, and it also provides, of course, better fire protection for the public using the site. The conditions that are being proposed, my client accepts, and I think it's the point he wants to make is that this proposal will keep the land in farming because he has a history of innovative farming in that area. So it keeps the property in farming, but it also provides a tourism opportunity in that part of the world where there's quite a lot of sort of the skydiving facility attracts tourism, and he's trying to create a different tourism experience within the property. So that's really, unless there are some questions, that's really all I want to say on behalf of this proposal. I think the councillor's report has pretty well covered all the matters. It's a pretty comprehensive report.
Thank you very much. Councillors, do you have any questions or comments you want to make to the applicant? Councillor, Deputy Mayor Lycos.
Thank you, Frank. I was just wondering, the applicant lives on the property?
He lives part of the week, every week, on the property. So when I try to catch him on Monday and there's no internet connection for him, I can't find him because he's on the farm. So he spends, I think, about half a week each week on the property because he has a manager there who works with him to manage it. He's into pasture improvement with using pig waste. And there's an article in the Weekly Times, I think, about it last year, about how he's had great success in pasture improvement by using this technique. But he's also a gregarious sort of fellow, and the accommodation is something that he can also do.
Just one more question. So is the group accommodation for tourism, or is it for permanent residents to come and live there?
Tourism.
And is there anyone else living on the property, or just the manager and him?
He proposes to have a manager living in one of the buildings to manage the buildings from the group accommodation perspective, but that person will also work on the farm.
Okay.
But there's no permanent occupation, and you'll notice in the permit conditions that to avoid the prospect of the 4 titles being sold separately as individual businesses, if there's a 173 agreement condition in there that if the business ceases, then I've forgotten the wording of the 173 agreement, but it protects the existing situation and stops the fragmentation.
Okay.
Sorry, there's no one permanently living on there except for the manager and the applicant who's there part-time. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments, councillors? If not, thank you very much for your attendance this evening.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you.
Councillors, there's a recommendation from officers on page 209 to council to notice of a decision to grant a permit with 29 conditions. Would someone like to move that way? Thanks. Move Councillor Horrigan. Seconded. Councillor Murray.
Through you, Mayor, I'd actually like to move it with a recommendation.
Okay.
With an amendment.
Thank you.
Apologise.
That's okay.
So I'd like to move the recommendation as printed on page 210 of the agenda with the following amendment under condition 2 to include a point C, which states the owner acknowledges and accepts that the possibility of nuisance from adjoining or nearby agricultural operations may occur. The possible off-site impacts include but are not limited to dust, noise, odour, waste, vibration, soot, smoke, or the presence of vermin from animal husbandry, animal waste, spray, drift, agricultural machinery use, pumps, trucks and associated hours of operation.
Thank you. Is that okay with you, Councillor Murray, that amendment? Thank you. So, Councillor Horrigan, would you like to speak on this now? Thank you.
I would like to speak on it. So I do note and that I have read through the objections and I hope that adding this amendment really hits the requirements that they ask for.
Thank you very much. Councillor Murray.
Thank you. I believe as Councillor Horrigan has suggested, that this amendment will help to satisfy the objections that we have, and I also think it helps to protect the developed and those who live nearby. Thank you.
Councillor Murray. Any other councillor would like to speak on this? If not, councillors, we have the motion with the amendment. Councillors, all those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. Thank you. Okay, councillors, we have page 237, 9.8 planning permit, which is planning permit application P 2020-125, use of land for transfer station, loading, unloading and handling of scrap metal, including vehicles, and signage at 30 Boundary Road North, Euroa. Director Tingay.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. This proposal is for the use of land for a transfer station and associated signage at 30 Boundary Road North, Euroa. Existing infrastructure is located on site The application has been advertised and 6 objections were received. As a result, with objectors, 2 objectors have been withdrawn. The application is being heard before council due to the 4 remaining objections. The proposal meets the objectives of the planning policy framework, local planning policy framework, the industrial 1 zone, floodway overlay and the land subject to inundation overlay. There is a recommendation commencing on page 208 of the agenda for council's consideration this evening. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officer? If the objector come in, please. Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening. You have 5 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening all. We are here to ask councillors not to support Planning Department's decision to grant permit 2020-125. The application is falsely represented. It compares a transport depot in an enclosed building in Collingwood to an outdoor processing yard that tips, sorts metal and crushes and stores cars in Euroa. We purchased the Euroa Butter Factory and we understood in the local planning scheme Industrial Zone 1 to include certain passive industrial activities. A recycling processing facility is not automatically included in Industrial 1 zoning. Council previously endorsed the old butter factory's transformation by granting an accommodation and liquor licence. For 15 years, Euroa Butter Factory has worked very hard to establish an iconic destination, and I believe it has. Where is the consistency for a development strategy in the Strathbogie Shire's planning scheme? I don't see it. A recycling and processing facility threatens Euroa Butter Factory's existence. It isn't anyone's choice to live next to a recycling dump, and certainly nobody will choose to get married within close proximity. The proposed recycling facility is 170 metres away. Has a decibel test been undertaken from Euroa Butter Factory? No guarantee of noise generated from this site has been proven that it will meet the EPA standards. Neighbours have advised the on-site tipping noise was previously extreme. There was something similar before we arrived, and that's what I'm going by. How will council regulate the impact of noise, airborne asbestos particles and odour from an open site, which it is? Wedding photographers are very attracted to the rural road precinct. Chill Corp's proposed signage of 13 square metres with positioning not indicated on the plan is visually incompatible with the current scope of the road. A car crushing depot violates the activities of a wedding reception and accommodation venue. The businesses are not compatible. The Strathbogie Shire statistics confirm an overnight staying visitor contributes $198 per day to our local economy. Euroa Butter Factory brings additional income with excess of 3,000 visitors annually. Based on these calculations, Euroa Butter Factory contributes $1 million annually to our local economy. Additionally, food and wine is purchased within the Shire and 10 locals are employed. That's in addition. Where are the council's considerations and enforceable safeguards for surrounding contributing businesses? This places us in an unacceptable imposition. This places an unacceptable imposition on existing businesses. Council is proposing to open the much anticipated off-leash dog park. Have you considered the conflicting traffic, visual, noise and odour implications of a recycling facility that is 20 metres from a dog and family park that you intend developing? I wouldn't go there with my dog. We urge you to reconsider your delegates' recommendations. We request a meeting if you don't make a decision to support our objection. We request a meeting on site so as council can further consider the impacts of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillors, do you have any questions or comments you'd like to make to Councillor Binks?
Hi, Gillian and Bernard. I have obviously read through the objections and the responses provided to you by Chill Corp. I wanted to, first, I understand you also received Chill Corp's responses to your concerns. There was a final note that Chill Corp offered I guess, a bit of a bargaining chip around no machinery to be operated on Saturdays, excavator, forklift, compactor, etc., and no tipping of scrap metal on Saturdays. I note that this hasn't been included into the recommendation that is before us now, but if there was an amendment to the current conditions under section 10.2, so the current dot point is around, so the current point 10 is, unless with prior written consent from the responsible authority, the use hereby permitted, with exception of the compactor as per condition 11, may only operate between the following hours: Monday to Friday 7:30 to 4 p.m, Saturdays 9 till 12 per EPA guidelines for industrial. If that second dot point were to be amended to be that no machinery be operated on Saturdays, including excavators, forklift, compactor, and no tipping of scrap metal on Saturdays, would this ameliorate your objection?
Well, we have a wedding this Friday, so what would you say?
Yeah.
And next week I have a wedding on Thursday. Yeah. So what do you say?
That's at lunchtime.
And that's at lunchtime when they're proposing to be compacting cars, Thursday 2:30 in one of the recommendations from planning. So how do I actually choose when a client wants to choose when they'd like a wedding, when they'd like to stay, when they'd like to sleep in, when they'd like to come to Euroa, and when they'd like to take photographs on the quiet road? How do we say, sorry, we're going to have a recycling place just there? In fact, we'll probably close because it would be too embarrassing to continue. I feel very strongly we only need one bad comment on social media and we will have to close. That's how it works these days. And I don't understand what this idea, what this recycling, compacting, etc. business brings to Euroa, that Euroa Butter Factory has to be so compromised for.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other councillors? No, thank you for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good night.
Welcome, gentlemen. You have 5 minutes to speak to us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. We were hoping not to talk tonight, but we were just informed today that someone was talking against us, so we're not too well prepared. But we're very sad to hear the concerns from the Euroa Butter Factory. In Melbourne, we have a metal recycling yard in the middle of the city, Collingwood. So next door is Jim's Greek Tavern. I'm not sure if anyone knows that, but it's iconic to Melbourne. On the other side is a sound studio. Our neighbours love us, which my brother will confirm. So the only thing they get upset with is when we refuse to go there because they don't charge us at Jim's Creek Tavern. So we want to work with everyone. So it was devastating to hear that. Whatever the butter factory needs, we can work around their schedule. We don't want to see any business suffer. We want to bring employment to Euroa as well as recycling. We've dedicated our lives to recycling, and we do up to 200 tonnes a week. So one thing we do understand is brand protection. So we recycle for the EPA, for WorkSafe. So we can't jeopardise losing these government contracts through being a backyard recycler. Some of the things that were thrown out there, which I addressed, we don't recycle asbestos, any waste whatsoever. And when we're talking about odours and things like that, I can't smell metal. If people can smell metal, I'd probably be a little bit concerned. I'd probably see a doctor about that. But as for any dangerous waste, we do not handle it whatsoever. And everything we handle has a value. So it's in a very high value. So copper is over $10,000 per tonne. So we turn it very quick. And this is a new revenue stream for Euroa and surrounding areas. So we want to work with all our neighbours. We spoke to everyone. We rang the butter factory, and it was quite upsetting because they were quite rude to us and just did not want to work. I said, can we please sit down for a coffee? We want to help you. You tell us what your concerns are. Let's address them. Whatever you need us to do, we're going to do. So height restrictions, all the EPA guidelines we're going to follow because we need to, and we do at our other sites. Yep. We recycle for Australia's biggest building companies. We can't risk being a backyard recycler. We want to get involved in the community. We're going to sponsor the football club, the cricket club, the golf club. We do a lot of charity work. Just a couple of weeks ago, a single mother couldn't afford to move her house, lost her job to COVID, got evicted. We moved her for free of charge. It's what we do. So some similar things around the area. That's, we're here to help out. I wish we could sit down with the butter factory and just resolve it because we're open to discussion. There's a wedding on a Thursday, no problem. We're going to work around that. So what would you like? No machinery on the Thursday? That's fine. We can move our logistics. We can move whatever it needs to happen. We definitely want to work with our neighbours.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Councillors, do you have any comments? Yes, Councillor Dickerson.
Yeah, thank you. Do you have machinery going in your Melbourne plant?
In one of our yards, we do, yes. Not so much in Collingwood, besides a forklift, but at our other facility, yes, we have an excavator, front-end loader.
And where is that facility?
In our reservoir.
Sorry?
Reservoir.
A reservoir. And is that close by residential or is it an industrial area?
It's industrial.
Right, yeah. So it doesn't disturb neighbours?
No. We've never had a noise complaint. And like I said, next door is literally a sound recording studio. So...
that's in Reservoir?
That's in Collingwood. Yeah, so Reservoir, we've never had any complaints, industrial area. Collingwood's not industrial. It's a commercial property. And we've never had any complaints at any of our facilities. And, if our neighbours need help, we're there to help them, whatever it may be.
And how many people would you be expecting to employ here?
Probably we've got 3 ready to go, locals, who are sort of, twisting our arm because they're quite eager to gain employment. So 3 to 10, hopefully, we can continue to build and hopefully the sky's the limit.
And could you just describe a little bit more about your approach to the objectors and how long ago it was and what the response was?
So when I rang the butter factory, so we've spoken to a few of the objectors. One of the concerns was directly across the street and there was not a very large turning circle. So we spoke to them and I said, look, I'll sign a stat deck. I'll extend the gate, the driveway. So it's a wider turning circle for the trucks. And then she was very happy with that. They took it away. We met them out the front before, lovely couple. Then there was someone else, he has trucks parking out the front of his house, which is around the corner. And we explained.
They said they didn't have a permit.
Yeah. So they were angry at another neighbour, nothing to do with us. And they said, we're sorry, we're making you pay for it, but we'll remove that objection. Then when I rang the butter factory, they said, look, we don't really want to talk to you, you need to deal with council. And then we rang again. We saw them out the front of our facility taking photos, and when I approached them and said, can I help you with something? They said they were going to have dinner next door. Clearly they weren't, because they were taking photos of our facility, but I just wish they came in and said, you know, these are our concerns. Can we work together? And I want to work together. I'm not here to upset anyone. And, you know, wherever they need help. The most disappointing part of this was when I was telling people about Euroa, I was saying about the butter factory and other things. There's a beautiful golf course up there. And, you know, now sort of getting slandered by the butter factory. So we don't do waste. We're a recycling company. We specialise in metals. Back in Melbourne, we deal with e-waste, which we're not doing up here. Just metal, yeah.
Okay, I think noise is probably one of the objectors' issues, particularly with regards weddings when they have them, and they're often around lunchtime. So you mentioned before you're quite willing to work around things, and I know you can only do that a certain amount of the time, but you're quite open to try and cut that noise during their wedding times, yeah.
Definitely, and our doors are open. If they have to come down and say, look, we've got a Friday wedding, I can say, okay, we'll work around it. We offered to, we're not really going to open on Saturdays. We like the flexibility because I might need to do paperwork or if someone was to come in, but we did offer to not use the machines on Saturday because, look, if it's someone's special day, we don't want to upset them. And it's 450 metres away on Google Earth. It's not 140. So it is a decent distance. I just couldn't imagine that they would hear us on anything that we would be doing.
Okay, thank you.
There was one comment they did make in their submission was that the fact of noise emanating off your site. Are you willing to do a noise study on that so we can have an understanding of what the noise impact would be on our community?
Yeah, most definitely. But that would obviously require operating.
Yeah, if
the EPA do have tests and noise restrictions around that, so we would be fined if we were making large amounts of noise. Other recycling facilities that do make large amounts of noise normally have shredders and shears and things like this, huge machinery that we don't have. We just don't have it, so it couldn't make that much noise. It would, it literally would be loading trucks, and that would be the loudest we would go.
Sorry, just on that,
yes.
When you talk about the noise, if you're saying on that facility, we don't have any machinery there, so logistically it'd be pretty hard to bring the machinery, do the noise test, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand because the objectors were talking about noise emanating from your site, which would make it hard for them to have a wedding or run their facility.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand what noise what noise you would emanate from your site that we can legitimately say, yes, it's going to be under that noise, or no, it's not going to be under that noise, that we, as a council, believe that you are working within the EPA guidelines to give us an understanding of your noise emanating from your site.
Yeah, I think that would be a little hard to measure without starting the operation, but with the EPA's letter that they sent through, you'll see that they've said they've got no objections to that, and they've known in our process, they would know without a shear and without a shredder, we just couldn't generate that much noise.
Okay.
Yeah,
Councillor Murray?
Besides loading the trucks, we just don't generate that much noise.
Can I just ask a question about how many days do you need to operate to make a go of this particular business? So you were mentioning that you don't need to operate on a Saturday. Are there other occasions when you may not need to operate?
No, we'd definitely need to operate Monday to Friday because we'd be letting customers down.
So not Sunday?
So not Saturday?
And not Sunday, sorry.
Yeah, definitely not Sunday.
Right.
Just on that, our plan is with Saturday is not necessarily an open door trade day, but we need that flexibility if there is some customers that can't get there Monday to Friday, forever. If an individual works and they need to come on a Saturday morning, that's what it's there for.
Yes, no, I'm really just referring to machinery operation, really, in this regard. And there may be, you were suggesting the option of not operating machinery on other occasions during the week if that was negotiated with you.
Oh, most
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. If there was someone's wedding and the butter factory came to us and said, look, there's a Friday afternoon wedding, that's fine. We can work around that. And we want to work with all our neighbours. We're not closed-minded or anything like that. I wish we were able to sit down and have a coffee with them and resolve this. I really do.
Just back to the noise issue. At your Collingwood or Reservoir site, which one would be similar to the one you're putting here in Euroa?
Probably Reservoir.
Would you be able to do a noise test there to give us an idea of what the noise would be emanating off that site?
I guess we could. I guess we could, but we'd need some sort of guarantee that this was going to be taken away because, we definitely want to get started up in Euroa.
I
It's
understand.
been delayed so long, it's starting to get a bit alarming. But look, whatever it takes to just get it over the line, most definitely. We've done noise tests in the past when I was at Sims Metal, but I know it's going to come back very low. The excavator isn't even on site at the minute, actually, so it would be a forklift. I'm not sure how loud forklifts can really be. Perhaps a front end loader as well, but
Well, we can get a sound test of the excavator loading steel because that's what it's doing out on a job site at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Horrigan?
Sorry, I do have a question now that you've mentioned that. So the butter factory did say before that they have a wedding on a Thursday at lunchtime, and I noticed that in the report that's when you can use the car crusher. So I'm guessing that a noise of a car crusher would be quite more substantial than that of a forklift.
So I would say the car crusher is only going to be used probably on average 1 to 2 hours a week. So that doesn't matter at a certain time. We can do that whenever. But we chose a Thursday afternoon as a specific time so our neighbours know if it is any noise.
we didn't think people get married on Thursday. So
but
it could be Tuesday.
That could be a Tuesday. And same with our excavator, back to your question, that noise. Our excavator's just going to be loading bins, so it's actually only going to use probably an hour a day. Forklift probably a little bit more. But regards to that question, that car crush can be used any day, any time, for probably 1 to 2 hours a week.
So how are you going to be able to work if we've got a stipulation that we've now saying you can only use your crusher between 12 and 2 on a Thursday and they've got a wedding on, you can't crush it till the next week? How are you going to operate with that?
We were hoping we can move that day then. So we didn't think people get married on Thursdays. So we could move that to a Tuesday and lock that in.
Yep. Okay.
Have a flexibility. We can use it once a week over Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or something like that.
In consultation with the owners of the butter factory. Okay. All right. Any other questions, councillors? If not, thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Cheers, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Director Tingo, there was a comment made about noise and there was in the report there's no noise detection or anything like that. Do we need to wait till we get a noise report back prior to going forward with this, or are you happy with the I'm not sure how to go with it because the noise issue is a very big issue for me.
Yes.
I just want to clarify that.
And obviously the application has been referred to the EPA as well, so we would certainly need their input in any kind of report that was undertaken as well to ensure that it met their guidelines as well.
Okay, Councillor Murray.
Can I move a motion to defer this application for a month?
Defer specifically on what reason, can I ask, please?
to facilitate further negotiation with the objector in order to do that and to gather data about noise reports.
Excellent.
Yep.
All right. Okay, no worries. Councillor Murray, Councillor Executive Manager of Governance.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. If that was what you were intending to do, I would suggest that maybe a month might not be sufficient to engage a noise consultant and to do the modelling for the noise impact. So it may be better to list what you want to happen rather than give a specific date.
Right, so can I suggest then, can I move a motion that defers this application until council can receive some reports with regard to noise and the generation of noise within this facility, and can help to facilitate some negotiation about timetables with the butter factory.
No worries at all. Pleasure. Someone like to second that? Councillor Deputy Mayor Lykos. Okay, Councillor Murray, you want to speak any further on this?
Well, I mean, I am persuaded by the objector that this is a significant, who runs a significant business in this community, that this particular development may be in its present form one which would severely hamper the operation of their business. And I believe we as a council ought to be reassured that that the operation of this business, although it is in an industrial zone, will not undermine the ability of a nearby business to run their successful business. So I think this would enable us to get some information, some feedback from the proposers of this business to see whether we can ensure that there won't be any bad consequences for the other business.
Okay, thanks you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Deputy Mayor Lykos.
Yeah, I just want to second what Councillor Murray said, and also just say that I was quite impressed at the efforts that the developer or the applicant seems to be wanting to, communicate openly with the objectors, and I think that's very positive, and I would like to encourage the objectors to take that invitation to speak with the applicant and maybe come to a resolution and an understanding of how this is going to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Horrigan.
Through you, Mayor, I am sympathetic to the developer and until after what they've said tonight, that they have actually tried to make contact with the owners of the Euroa Butter Factory now twice. And this has been confirmed, I know, from speaking with also the Euroa Butter Factory that this occurred. And so now that we are, delaying it for them to talk to them, I really, I will support it. But I really do encourage that they do this. I do want to make note that it is an industrial zone, and it has been an industrial zone for a long time. And so what other zone would you put a recycling facility in?
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Councillor Dickinson.
Yeah, just going on from Councillor Horrigan and a few other remarks. It is an industrial zone. It is recycling. I'm all for recycling. I am concerned that the two parties don't seem to be able to get together, and this to me presents an opportunity for one of those parties to come forward, sit down and have a coffee as was suggested. But if they won't come together, where does that leave everyone? I guess we've just got to go with what we're hearing and what both parties are telling us, and that is one party's prepared to work with the other and the other's not prepared to work with them.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Any other comment, please? If not, I'll put the deferral motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. Thank you. Councillor Hayes-Burke. Can someone go and get Councillor Hayes-Burke, please? All right, page 274, 9.9. Planning application received and planning applications determined, 1 to 28 Feb 2021. Director Tingay.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. Listed on commencing on page 275 of the agenda is a list of planning applications received. We also have a list of planning applications determined for the period of 1 to 28th of February 2021 for council and community information. It is to be noted that during this period there were 9 applications received and 14 planning applications determined. There is a recommendation printed on page 274 of the agenda for council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Director. Councillors, any questions of the officer? If not, as the Director did state, there is a recommendation on page 274 to be the report to be noted. Is there a councillor willing to pass a motion? Councillor Murray, is there a seconder? Councillor Binks. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Binks, would you like to speak? Thank you. Any other councillor like to speak on this one? If not, all those in favour? All those against? Declare it carried. All right, next one is on page 280. 9.10, Sport and Recreation Victoria funding application, co-council contribution for projects. Director Tingay.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. There is currently a state government grant opportunity called the Local Sports Infrastructure Fund available for council to submit to. There's a number of grant opportunities within this funding stream, and that includes better indoor stadiums, female-friendly facilities, community sports lighting, facilities for active seniors, scoreboards and fixed equipment. There is currently following priority projects that were assessed by our officers, there is 2 projects that have been determined shovel ready to apply for a funding application that is due on the 22nd of March. The projects that have been identified are upgrading to the lighting at Ngambie Rec Reserve and the redevelopment of old tennis courts into 2 additional netball courts at the Longwood Recreation Reserve. There is a funding contribution, a commitment from council that is required should these funds be secured through the grant opportunity. There is a recommendation on page 280 of the agenda for council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, any question of the officer? If not, is there a councillor willing to pass the recommendation on page 280? Thank you. Councillor Dickinson and Councillor Murray. Councillor Dickinson, you have the floor.
No, it'll be, apart from the fact that it'll be great for the communities.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Councillor Murray.
I just want to support that. It'll be terrific for both the communities, both Ngambie and Longwood, who have both got their projects up and ready to go, and look forward to being able to use these facilities. Thank you.
Any other councillor like to speak? If not, all those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. Page 286, 9.1, advocacy regarding Queensland fruit fly control. Director Tingay.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. As we know, within our community, Queensland fruit fly is a significant problem for the horticulture here, not only in our area, but also broadly the Goulburn Valley. The current fruit fly education and eradication program expires on the 30th of June this year. At this stage, the state government has not committed to providing further funding to enable the continuation of this program. Strathbogie Shire is a member of the Governing Council of the Goulburn-Murray Valley Regional Fruit Fly Group, which operates under the No Flies on Us banner. We are a partner with other organisations, including Agriculture Victoria, Fruit Growers Victoria, Cobram District Fruit Growers Association, the Shire of Campaspe, Greater Shepparton City Council, Moira Shire, and also Berrigan Shire. This group has done an enormous amount of work in lowering the fruit fly infestation across the region, as well as educating residents and community groups about fruit fly control. This report is to seek assistance in advocating for further funding from the Victorian Government to allow this program to continue into the future. There is a recommendation on page 286 of the agenda for Council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Director Tingo. Councillors, any question of the officer? If not, there is a recommendation from the officers on page 286, as Director stated, to write to the Minister and local parliamentarians to continue funding the fruit fly education eradication project. Is someone like to move that? Councillor Dickinson. Is there a seconder? Councillor Deputy Mayor Lycos. Councillor Dickinson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Turn your mic on, please.
Copy there. As Officer Tingo mentioned, there's 4 shires involved here: Shepparton, Moira, Berrigan and Strathbogie. And I think it's a no-brainer to be able to write a letter to the Minister requesting ongoing support of $500,000. Fruit fly is becoming a huge problem here. Having grown up in this area, when we crossed the border as kids, you had to always get rid of your fruit. Well, the fruit fly's here now. Things have changed. It's an ongoing problem and it's getting bigger. So whatever we can do to eradicate this pest, let's do it.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Councillor Lycos.
Thank you, Mayor. As Councillor Dickinson pointed out, it is a huge problem and it is getting worse. And as well as needing funding to keep this, program going, we need the community to come together and we need everyone to be a part of this solution and eradication of this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor like to speak on this? If not, all those in favour? Against, declare it carried. Thank you. Next one is on page 293, 9.12, Euroa leash-free area declaration. Director off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll give Director Tingo a break for a while. This report has been some time coming. It's came out of the council plan several years ago to develop a leash-free area. So we now have got to the stage where it's basically fenced and specific gates have been installed. There's a little bit more work to be done, some minor concreting, just making sure that the fencing's escape-proof. We're getting signage developed, placing some seating in the area, which we expect will only take a couple of weeks. But in the meantime, we need to designate the area formally as a leash-free area because the local law that we have says you must have your dog on a lead unless it's in a designated area. So we've identified the area on the plan within the report. So what we're suggesting here is that council declare the area as a leash-free area as is provided in the local law. There are some rules that will be put on the signage for people to observe, and then we'll do a public information campaign. So we expect it'll be ready in a couple of weeks. But I'd just like to say that dealing with the Agricultural Society has been a pleasure to do, and in particular Andrew Douglas has been very helpful and accommodating. So good project, which hopefully will have dogs running around in a couple of weeks.
Thank you very much, Director. Councillor, have any questions of the officer? If not, is there a councillor ready to move a motion, which is recommendation on 293, that Euroa leash free area under the community local law approve the rules for the park and undertake a community awareness campaign. Is there a councillor? Councillor Lykos, Councillor Hayesburg, Councillor Lykos, you have the floor.
Thank you. I think this is fantastic as a dog owner, although I live in Nagambie, so I'm really looking forward to working on the project of getting one in Nagambie soon, David. But it's fantastic for Euroa, so good news.
Thank you. Councillor Hayesburg.
Just, like to say I'm looking forward to the community members enjoying this new facility.
Thank you. Any other councillor who'd like to speak? Councillor Horrigan.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. This is fantastic news that will be open in 2 weeks, I think, roughly, just over 2 weeks, David. This all started in 2018 on a Facebook forum, the Euroa Community Notice Board, which then turned into a community of all different members getting together, and it went through a long time, and we went through all different places to have it, and there was a lot of community engagement and consultation, and I'm just really grateful that in 2021 that the leash-free dog area will be open, ready for the public to use. So thank you to the community members that pushed for this, and thank you to the previous council, yes.
Councillor Murray.
I'd just like to support what Councillor Horrigan was saying. It's been a long time coming, and it's terrific now that it's been announced that it will open in just a few weeks. It'll be a really valuable asset. It'll be valuable for physical exercise for both the dogs and their owners, and also their mental well-being. I think that'll improve, and perhaps even the well-being of some of the neighbours who live next to dogs that really need some exercise now and again. So it'll be terrific. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Murray. Any other councillor would like to speak? If not, all those councillors for the motion, against, declare it carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is page 300, which is 9.13, instruments of appointment and authorisation update. Director Roth.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. From time to time, we need to authorise officers or delegate powers to them to undertake a range of functions. And this is an update to allow for basically 3 officers. Our new team leader, compliance, needs to be authorised to act under a number of acts, including the CFA Act, Domestic Animals Act, Food Act, Local Government Act, EPA Act. So there's a schedule there, so we need to authorise him to be able to fulfil his role. But in addition, with Director Tingo starting with council, we've had to authorise her under particularly the Planning and Environment Act, and also in the gap where we haven't had a team leader, I've had to do some planning compliance work. So we've taken the opportunity to authorise me as well under the Planning and Environment Act if we need to. So hopefully that will cover most of what we need.
Thank you, Director Roth. Councillors, do you have any question of the officer? If not, is there a councillor okay to move a motion on officer's report on page 300? Councillor approve the appointments and authorisation. Councillor Horrigan, seconded by Councillor Lykos. Councillor Horrigan, do you speak? Councillor Lykos. Thank you. Any other councillor like to speak on this issue? If not, all those in favour? Against? Lost on the... Thank you. That motion has now been passed. Carried. Page 313, 9.14, Southern Aurora Memorial Mural application for sponsorship. Director Tingo, you're back on.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. It is good to be back on the microphone, so thank you. So report 9.14 is in regards to the Southern Aurora Memorial Committee. They applied for a RE3 COVID response community grant in round 1. However, a component of their overall project that they submitted in their application didn't align with that particular funding. It was recommended to the committee by Councillor officers that they change the scope of their funding and apply for sponsorship under the arts and culture budget, which this is. They have subsequently requested funding support of $5,000 to paint a mural relating to the Southern Aurora crash on an existing fence in the Memorial Gardens at Violet Town. There is a recommendation on page 313 of the agenda for Council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Director. Councillors, any questions of the officer? If not, there's a councillor willing to remove the motion on page 313 for the approval sponsorship of the mural. Reg and Councillor. You okay to do that, Councillor Dickinson?
Yep.
Thank you, sir. And Councillor Binks. Councillor Dickinson, would you like to speak?
Actually remember this. I think, if I'm correct, there were quite a few lives lost at the time.
Yes.
And I was only a kid at the time, but yeah, to have something in memory of those people, I think is pretty significant. And in many ways, it put Violet Town on the map, probably for all the wrong reasons. But to remember that, I think, is a really significant and terrific thing.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Councillor Binks.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. I possibly should have said before Director Tingay launched into her report that I have an interest in this. However, it's not a conflict of interest. I designed the original garden that was built quite a few years ago now, but it's been amazing watching that, I guess, settle into the space that was just an empty big track yard, so it hadn't been used. So it's become a really great community asset in town. And to see this last piece of well, not the last, we've still got the train carriage to go, but another piece of the puzzle being given some money is really great. And I look forward to seeing what this project will bring to the space and the community.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Councillor Binks. Councillor Dickinson, can you turn your mic off, please? Any other councillor would like to speak? If I may, as the local ward councillor, I'd just like to congratulate the Southern Aurora Memorial Park Committee. They are doing a marvellous job, and it's becoming, that area now is becoming a tourist attraction, and it is unbelievable the amount of people who do stop and go and walk around that area. It's phenomenal. And the amount of people whose family or that have come to Violet Town to walk around and look at the carriage and all that, it's phenomenal what it's done for helping people whose family was involved in this back in 1969 on February the 7th. So, yeah, no, it's good. And I believe the person who will be painting this is a very, very reputable person. He done the Colburn Avon silos, I believe. So it'll be very good. So I think it's great. Any other comments, councillors? If not, all those in favour? Against, declare it carried. Thank you. Okay. Next one is page 319, which is not 9.15, reduction in load limit for Kerwin's Bridge. Director Tingay.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. In 2020, Council undertook a detailed inspection and assessment of the load carrying capacity of Kerwin's Bridge crossing the Goulburn River. The structure was to be found in poor condition, and there are a number of outstanding maintenance items that require attention. Given the deterioration of the building, of the bridge, it is proposed that a 3-tonne load limit be imposed and that the existing 20-kilometre speed limit be continued to maintain the integrity of the structure. Also, to support this close and recommendation, broad communications and engagement is required. This will be done in a staged approach, and we also want to have an open, honest and clear conversation with our community in regards to the future of the bridge to ensure that Council understands the views of the community and stakeholders. A 3-tonne limit will restrict the ability of a number of vehicle types and combinations. Many vehicles will be required, should this recommendation be passed tonight, to travel around the western side of Lake Ngambie, utilising Kettles Road, Reedy Lake Road, Weir Road, Ngambie Rushworth Road and Vickers Road to reach the township of Ngambie. To support the increase in traffic volume that would take that route from 100 vehicles per day to approximately 500 vehicles per day. It is also proposed that Council seal the gravel pavements along this route once funding has become secure. The ability for ambulances under flashing lights to transverse Kerwin's Bridge shall remain. There is a recommendation, councillors, on page 320 of the agenda for your consideration. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Director. Councillors, any question of the Direct Officer? Yes, Councillor Dickinson.
I did ask the question at the last meeting about having cameras on each end of the bridge. It just wasn't mentioned in your report then, and I think they would be essential. Has it been considered?
Through you, Mayor, yes, it certainly was considered. I understand that there has been a camera there previously and that has been relocated, but certainly if this is something that councillors tonight wish to discuss as part of their motion, then certainly officers can relook.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, councillors, there's a recommendation from officers on page 320 for the council to impose a 3-tonne limit on Kerwin's Bridge and notify the CFA and seal the Weir Road subject to funding. Is there someone like to move a motion? Thanks. Councillor Lykos.
I will move the motion, but I would like to add a recommendation to the list, an amendment, by adding a recommendation at number 4, being that council undertakes community engagement to seek community and stakeholder views on the future of the bridge and propose to establish a working group to assist in this process. And considering what Councillor Dickinson has just brought up about the cameras, I wonder if that's somewhere we can add that we would like cameras to be installed to monitor the tonnage, the load. Otherwise, how are we going to control that?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Is there a second to the motion? Councillor Dickinson. Okay, Councillor Lykos, you can now speak on the motion.
Thank you, Mayor. So just to sum up a little bit, I suppose, and maybe repeat a few things that Director Tingay has stated. The Strathbogie Shire Council's tonight discussing the reduction of the load limit on Kerwin's Bridge to 3 tonne. Council's recently undertaken a detailed inspection and assessment of the load carrying capacity of Kerwin's Bridge. It has found that the bridge is in poor condition and there are several maintenance items that need attention. Reducing the load capacity from 6 tonne to 3 tonne and continuing to impose a 20-kilometre-hour speed limit will maintain the integrity of the structure. This means vehicles above 3 tonne will need to cross the Goulburn River by travelling along Vickers, Ngambie, Rushworth, Weir, Reedy Lake and Kettles Road. To support the increased heavy traffic, Council will seek grant funding to seal the gravel pavements along this route. We want to assure the community, our community, that this is about safety. The ability, as Director Tingay pointed out, for ambulances under flashing lights to cross Kerwin's Bridge will remain. Should this recommendation be supported, we'll work with our community and form a Kerwin's Bridge working group to decide the best future use of the bridge, hence the addition of item 4 under the recommendation. And I would like to move this recommendation as printed on page 320 with that amendment and the amendment of adding the cameras.
So 4 and 5.
4 and 5, which would be adding the cameras to the bridge.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Lykos. Second, Councillor Dickinson. Would you like to speak now, sir?
think Councillor Lycos has said it all, really. If this bridge is to have a future, then we've got to look after it, we've got to protect it, and we've got to protect the public. And now we'll have some consultation with the community about it. That's it, thank you.
Okay, any other councillor would like to speak on this one? If not, although with the motion which has now been amended with the extra 2, 4 and 5, 1, 4 being including consultation and working group and 5 being installing a camera, all councillors okay with the motion? If that's okay, all those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. Thank you. Right, page 327, 9.16, road exchange, unnamed road reserve. Director Tingay.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. This report, item 9.16, seeks approval from council to commence proceedings to deviate a road for a road reserve adjacent to the unnamed road within 4,316 Heathcote-Nagambie Road for lots 3 and 8 as shown on attachment 1. The road exchange will then be undertaken for private property in the western part of lot 8, unnamed road as shown on attachment 2. In the exchange for the western part of lot 8 as shown on attachment 2 to realign the unused road reserve with the physical track, the eastern part of the property adjacent to lot 3 as per attachment 1 will revert to the private property for the construction of staff accommodation. The unnamed road reserve transverses through the property. The road is used by the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, Goulburn Murray Water, and is open to members of the public to access the Goulburn River. There is a recommendation printed on page 327 and 328 of the agenda for council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Sorry, we're just having a little joke up here. Councillor, have you got any questions for the CEO when the director's actually given the speech? But that's okay. So, councillors, have we got any questions of the officer? If not, is councillor willing to move the motion which is put on page 327? Councillor Dickinson.
I'd like to make an amendment to the motion, and as follows: recommendations 1 through to 7 in the recommendation to remain as per the officer's report, and amend recommendation 8 to read in 2 parts as follows. Following the advertising period, if no public submissions are received, A, authorise officers to undertake the exchange of road reserve adjacent to lot 3, TP 009233Q for part of lot 8 on TP 009233Q with the owner of 4316 Heathcote-Nagambie Road, and B, require the owner to install signage advising that the road will remain open for public access with all costs in parts A and B to be borne by the owner.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Is there a seconder to this amendment? Councillor Binks, Councillor Dickinson, if you'd like to speak on this issue, thanks.
I think there are just so many examples of this type of road that people generally are unaware that they do have access because it's Crown land. And for that reason, we're telling the public, you can go down this road, you can use this Crown land, you've got the use of the water. It's not just for the use of the people who live nearby or on the water.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Dickinson. Councillor Binks. You don't want to speak? Thank you. Are there any other councillor I'd like to speak? Councillor Dickinson, can you turn off your mic, please? Thank you. No other councillor making comments? All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. I know you want to be heard, Councillor Dickinson. Page 337, 9.17, the Australian Rail Track Corporation, ARTC, advocacy call for genuine communication engagement and funding for the development of a railway precinct concept plan. Director Tingay.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. So this report, item 9.17, is in relation to advocacy to the ARTC, calling for genuine community engagement and also requesting to local state members of parliament funding for a development of a railway precinct concept plan. So in relation to the ARTC and the Commonwealth Government's Inland Rail project, there is a clear aim of getting more freight on rail. More specifically in Euroa, there is not an adequate clearance under the Anderson Street Bridge, and new infrastructure will be required to safely allow for double stacked carriage trains. This is a large investment in our municipality and a holistic view should be taken. To support that view, it is recommended that more broadly a railway precinct concept design plan be developed. This plan would conceptualise and itemise the potential redevelopment of the Euroa rail precinct to provide greater connectivity and accessibility and a visionary approach to the area. To enable Council to undertake this important piece of work, external financial assistance is required. Further, the ARTC is currently seeking feedback on the urban design framework for the Euroa Station precinct. The urban design framework is a key strategic document that sets out the long-term integrated design vision to guide the future use and development of the area. Community sessions were undertaken on the 9th and 10th of March. There was minimal notice provided to the community and key stakeholders publicly advising of these sessions. This inadequate notice period raises concern for Council and the community that the ARTC is not genuine in their community engagement processes. In addition, we seek a commitment from the ARTC that they provide evidence-based options to enable the community to make informed decisions. There is a recommendation on page 338 of the agenda for Council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillor, is there any questions of the Director? If not, someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Hayes-Burke, seconded Councillor Murray. Councillor Hayes-Burke.
I really believe that the creation of a concept plan will help the community have a stake in this incredibly important project that presents a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We as Council want to help the community get the best outcome that is going to that looks into the future but also reflects on our heritage and our green spaces. We now know that the ARTC's urban design framework doesn't really provide any further assurance to the community, and ARTC made it clear in one of their community consultation meetings that they're actually anticipating this concept design plan from the Council. I just reiterate that I'm delighted by the recent correspondence from ARTC indicating that they will further consult with the community and investigate an underpass option as a real viable option. And perhaps I just should note, we were anticipating that Michael McCormack, who is the Minister in charge of this matter, would be visiting on Friday, but we're very disappointed to hear that he's no longer coming. He was visiting with Helen Haynes, who's been incredible in Parliament advocating for Euroa. So, I mean, yeah, we're really disappointed. So I think that just shows we need to put more pressure, maybe write the Minister another letter and let him know that that's just not on, because we were really waiting to put forward the community's views at that meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. I think really it's important to acknowledge the community pressure that's been applied to ARTC, and I think that pressure and the council's willingness to advocate on behalf of the community have been important prods for the ARTC to start moving forward on this matter. And I do take some heart in the fact that I think the ARTC is moving towards a more consultative approach. So I like the fact that that we are putting more pressure on the ARTC to come up with a railway precinct concept. I think that's important, plus to get more involved in that engagement process that we have been talking about. In addition to that, I do note that the ARTC are finally talking about other design options for the area. And I do believe we've been giving some direction to the ARTC by making some clear statements about what our expectations are, and I think they are beginning to listen to that, and the community and council are making a difference in this matter. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Murray. Any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Lykos.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to Councillor Hayes' comment in regards to Minister McCormack choosing to bypass his visit to Euroa, considering he's going to be in Benalla and then heading to Seymour. Just really disappointing. Thanks.
Any other councillor? I, as Mayor of Strathbogie Shire, am bitterly, I'll be honest, very bitterly disappointed that the Deputy Prime Minister of Australia is going to Wangaratta, Benalla, on his way to Seymour, and he's not stopping here. I find that, to be honest, appalling, and we are equally entitled to have the Deputy Prime Minister of Australia come and talk to us about an ARTC project. I just find that unless the local members of the National Party get behind his ear and have a chat to him in the next couple of days, I find this just contemptuous in a lot of ways. I'm sorry, but we as a community are entitled to be served with our representatives in the federal sphere, and I have to congratulate a lot of other ministers that I'm talking to and their advisors on other issues which I'm advocating for our community. And I understand why now I'm going to be speaking to the ARTC inquiry on the 22nd of April. We've been given half an hour to speak, and I'll be absolutely scathing on the Deputy Prime Minister's non-arrival here, because to me that says that they're not interested in us, and I believe we are warranted and we are required to be noted that we are here, and I am very disappointed in that attitude. Thank you, councillors. All those in favour? All those against? Declare it carried. Thank you. Page 345, tender for contract 2021-14 for the provision of a house protection levy. Councillor Tingay.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
I know.
Sorry.
I know, it's just about got that way. It's got late in the night, I can tell you. I got excited.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Sorry, Director.
No,
I
that is
apologise.
perfectly okay.
When you retire, you become a councillor.
Yeah, we'll see. Council undertook a public tender process for contract 20-21-14 for the provision of a house protection levy at 183 Euroa Main Road, Euroa, commencing on the 29th of May 2020. At the closing of the tender, 2 tenderers were received, with 1 tender being deemed non-conforming. A preferred tenderer was determined, however, pricing was outside the original budget range, and instructions were sought from council as to how to proceed. There was a recommendation that was resolved at the December 2020 council meeting, and council resolved to agree that the house protection levy activity is to be completed under this grant funding, negotiate with the preferred tenderer to identify cost savings for this project in an effort to undertake the required work within the current budget allocation in this financial year, and if substantial savings cannot be achieved achieved without undermining the intended outcomes to allocate the required expenditure within the 2021/2022 council budget to complete the works. As a result of the council resolution, officers were unable to negotiate a price reduction with the preferred tenderer. However, it has been identified in the 2020-2021 budget that there has been savings identified within the major culvert renewal program to support this project. There is a recommendation on page 345 of the agenda for council's consideration, recommending to award the contract and proceed with the works this financial year. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, any question of officer? If not, there is a recommendation on page 345 to award the tender. Is there a councillor willing to move that way, sir? Councillor Murray, Councillor Lykos, Councillor Murray.
No, I have nothing to say about the matter formally.
Thank you, Councillor Lykos.
No, I have nothing to comment.
Thank you. Any other comments, councillors? If not, all those councillors in favour? Against? Declare it carried. Thank you. Page 350, 9.19, Business Management System, CEO, Solomon.
Thank you, through Mayor. Looks like it's my turn to pick up the speaking baton, but I will be brief. Before councillors this evening is our monthly business management systems report, which provides councillors and our community with an overview of some of the statistics underpinning the performance of some of our key business areas. And it allows councillors and the community to track and monitor our performance over time. So the recommendation before councillors is for noting. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Any questions of the CEO? If not, there is a recommendation from officers on page 350 to note this report. Councillors, can I have a mover of that motion, please? Councillor Binks, seconded Councillor Haysbert. Good. Councillor Binks, do you have any comments? Councillor Haysbert. Okay. Any other councillor like to speak? If not, all those in favour, against, declare it carried. Thank you. Next one is page 368. Number 10, notice of motion. Ms. Solomons, are there a notice of motions?
Through you, Mayor, there is a notice of motion in the agenda papers tonight for 10.1, declaring a climate emergency declaration.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, there's 10.1, climate emergency declaration. Is there a mover? Councillor Haysbert.
I'd like to move a motion that this motion be deferred to the next council meeting. I think there's just been a little bit of maybe confusion within the community, and we'd just like to try and address some of those concerns. And hopefully over this month we'll provide some communication with the community on this matter. Can I maybe speak to this motion? Or?
No, you have to wait for a second. Okay. Is there someone's Reg seconds it? Thank you. Now you can speak, Councillor Haysbert.
My intention is to make decisions for the benefit of future generations. Having children myself makes me concerned every single day about the future of our planet. If our council were to declare a climate emergency, it would be only acknowledging the climate emergency that is already presented before us, not only based on 98% of scientists' views, but based on our own lived experiences. 29 other Victorian councils have already made this declaration, so it's not cutting edge of us to do so. It lays a foundation for action, creates awareness amongst the community, motivates policy that can be achieved at a local government level. Declaring an emergency should not be controversial. The science is there. Council is not going to put any burdens on ratepayers by declaring an emergency. it is stating that there are things we can do as an organisation to lower our carbon footprint. We are leaders who want to be a part of a solution, not add to a problem. We want to build resilient communities that in the future will have to deal with extreme drought, floods, fires, heat waves and storms, all due to global warming. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Councillor Dickinson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm comfortable deferring this motion for another month, and during this time I invite and welcome the public comments, whether they are in the affirmative or negative. It's my belief that I'm acting in the best interests of our community, our children, our children's children, and our planet. The evidence of global warming is indisputable. 97% of the world's scientists agree. Our oceans are rising, ice caps are melting, bushfires are occurring with greater rapidity, and floods have become more frequent. The evidence is there. Governments recognise it and are slowly introducing more controls to reach zero emissions. Our council can jump on board alongside 98 other councils Australia-wide. We can be leaders, or we can bury our heads in the sand and pretend that it's not happening. So please consider the evidence, put aside your prejudices if that's where you're at. Be responsible, honest and respectful, and keep an open mind.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Any other councillor who would like to speak? Councillor Horrigan, Councillor Dickinson, your mic, please.
Through you, Mayor, I would like to speak, and I'd like to speak on a few different topics. But first, I'd like to say thank you to both Councillor Haysbert and to Councillor Dickinson that they acknowledge, or they have popped through a deferment based on acknowledging that we do actually need to consult and engage with our community. So I do want to thank you for doing that tonight. I'm not 100% sure that 30 days or 1 month is enough time in order to consult and engage. I do want to first say that I believe that there is many members of the community that are not disputing the fact that the climate is changing. I believe that they believe that it is changing. They are concerned from the feedback that I've received about declaring a climate emergency and what that means for them. And I think that is a big difference between the two. I would also like to talk about that the report that we were given this month had a point there regarding community engagement, and it says one of the overarching governance principles in Section 9 of the Local Government Act 2020 is that the community is to be engaged in strategic planning and strategic decision making. Staff have not yet undertaken any community engagement around this climate emergency declaration that is written in our report. I would also like to draw your attention to the Strathbogie Shire Council 2020 completed our community survey in 2020, and as part of the report, the results were that the Strathbogie Shire Council achieved an overall score of 50 points, down from 56 in 2019. Council's overall performance is rated statistically significantly lower than the average rating for councils in the statewide and small rural groups. Rather than reading it all out to you, that is on the website, but I do want to make a point that it says in there, engaging and consulting with the community, we are down 6 points from 55. And I want us to recognise that these are statistics and this is actual fact. And so we need to ensure that we are engaging and consulting with the community, because that is what they've asked us to do. And whether it's regarding declaring especially on topics such as this, where we say in the report that the financial viability considerations is that there will be no financial implications for this financial year. And as far as I'm aware, we have 3 months left until this financial year is over. When further asked the question to an officer, what is the dollar figure or the range of dollar figure that it will be cost to declaring a climate emergency for the financial years of 2020, 2021, 21, 2022, 22, 2023, etc., it's unknown. It depends upon the council direction in a strategic action plan and a budget allocation. And so that makes me wonder regarding the report, regarding the financial viability considerations. So it does make me question that. I also want to point out that I did ask a question to officers that if a climate emergency declaration isn't supported by council, does that mean that we don't recognise that the climate is changing? Actions in our Sustainable Strathbogie 2030 plan will be continued. These actions also require budget commitments. So we have already made a commitment through the Sustainable Strathbogie 2030, and we consulted and we engaged before we made that commitment. I do have one last thing that I'd like to mention, and that is we've spoken a lot tonight, and we even responded to a question to a community member regarding that we are leaders. And I just want to make a statement about the kind of leader that I am. I am a leader who is here to listen to my community. I'm here to engage with them and consult with them any way I can. I'm a leader who wants to hear the community's voice and their opinion, whether or not I agree with it. I'm a leader who wants to remain impartial until I'm in these chambers, as we did tonight with each objectors that came in before I make a decision. And I'm a leader who believes strongly that I don't tell my community what to do, that I bring them along on my journey. Whilst I'm also a realist, and I understand that on some occasions I will not also have 100% agreement. However, at least I can say I opened the topic up, I received all the feedback, and I made an informed decision based on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillor would like to make comments? Councillor Murray.
I'd just like to make a couple of comments. I understand that this can be a passionate sort of topic, and we've seen some examples of that in some passionate addressing of council tonight. But you know, my concern about this is that we're really wasting time deferring the recognition of an emergency. My view here is that you don't sit around discussing whether a disaster has happened when the disaster is staring you in the face. We have a disaster, we have a crisis, it is an emergency, and we need to actually start talking about how do we cope with this particular problem. We need to talk about the real issue, is what do we do about this crisis and what do we do about this emergency, not defer and defer and defer because we have difficulty facing the situation that we are in. I think we need to face the situation and try and look at how, as a council, do we reduce our carbon footprint? How do we actually, as a council, make a difference here in this community, and to how do we adapt and how do we mitigate against this problem that's occurring? So I think that's where we should be heading, and I don't really agree with the deferment, other than to give us an opportunity, I suppose, to communicate with our ratepayers about the direction that we're heading in a little bit more detail.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Any other? Councillor Lykos?
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to make a comment, I guess, that I don't think deferring this notice needs to stop us from taking action and being leaders in doing what we can as a shire to mitigate our carbon footprint. I don't see why we have to wait for the notice of motion to be put through and the declaration to be made for us to start taking action and for it to be part of our council plan and our strategic plans going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lykos. Councillor Binks.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. I've had quite a few people contact me and speak with me as well. I see this deferment as an opportunity to work on an action plan as to what it means. I think there's a bit of confusion as to what does this mean for the community, and so to be able to clearly tell them these are the sort of actions, and we haven't agreed on these, but we have spoken to the Mayor of the Indigo Shire and some other people that have been on this journey before us, and understanding some of their choices in how they managed. It's an operationals decision, and in Jenny O'Connor, Mayor of Indigo Shires, she said, the financial side of it stacked up way against not taking action and not doing sort of, I guess, working toward reducing carbon. And she was showing us some really interesting business cases and opportunities. So I'm really excited about the opportunities, I guess, that lay ahead of us as a council. And how can we be a part of those opportunities that bring in revenue, both to our council and make us a more financially viable council, but also to businesses within our community. So I think there's some really exciting opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Just before I allow Councillor Haysbert to speak, I'd just like to say courage. I've seen courage here tonight, which I find warm and heartening. The people have got the courage to defer something to allow our community to consult, and I think that takes a lot of shows a lot of leadership, to be honest, and that's what we're about here. And I congratulate both the two councillors who have deferred this, because I think it's taken a lot of courage. So, Councillor Haysbert, you have the right to reply to any comment that has been made.
I just would like to say the argument not to declare a climate emergency yet still to take action, I don't see that having much. I think we're being more transparent by declaring the emergency, because we're being transparent about where we stand as a council and wanting to take leadership on serious global issues.
Thank you. All right, councillors, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against, declare it carried. Okay, CEO Simon, there is no rescission? No urgent business? Any confidential matters? So, councillors, all I'll say is thank you for a great night of council, and we'll see you here again on Tuesday the 20th of April at 6 p.m, and hopefully we'll run another beautifully organised council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.